Do one more loop. Thanks, Dr. Davies. Appreciate that. Okay. Welcome in, you guys. Welcome in. Twitch is doing some weird things, so hopefully we'll be able to work it all out. Hopefully we'll be able to work it all out. It seems like over the last week, Twitch has been twitching for me too. Thank you so much, Dr. Dady Priest, for checking in with me and letting me know that is a known issue. It's better now that the video isn't playing. So we're gonna keep it there. All right. So sorry that we're a little late. I'm actually still waiting for one other person to join us. So in the meantime, I'm just gonna show this our shows that are upcoming. Of course, the 14th is over, the 21st is today. Next week is going to be a really special, very, very special program. We have an educators panel, educators roundtable. We have about 7 or 8 educators coming in from the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, from all over. Teachers who are from junior high, elementary school, high school. We have educators that are going to be representing alternative ways of teaching our kids. So we're going to cover it from all areas. And I just wanted to point out that we are going to be doing that next week. All right. So it looks like our and in state the state in college. All right. So first, my goodness, all I'm hearing in the background is, excuse me, not the right thing. All right. Hold on, we're going to take a little break here. Hold on a second. This is not sounding good in my head, and I do not want to continue. So hold on. We're getting ready to take a break. We're getting ready to real quick. Break. Frank, Sheba, hang tight with me really quick because I don't know. Now, that's kind of weird because now we are just, I don't hear it. Okay, it's all good. It's kind of weird. All right, but there are 2 things that I need to do before we get started that I didn't do before we got started. Let me bring these in here. All right. This is going to get better, you guys. This is only my second show back. Thank you, Dr. Dady Priest. And I've got it. It's what I'm doing. So let me go ahead and. It's funny. It doesn't seem to be. Listen, let's bring in Frank. Frank, and I'm not.
What's happening?
So we're just gonna skip it. Hey.
What's happening? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. I'm just concerned that we're twitching on Twitch right now.
Okay.
So Dr. Dady Priest, I don't know if you're going to be hanging out with us the whole time, but please let me know how we're doing. All right. So welcome to the Inequality Podcast, Frank.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry,
how was your day today?
I was actually. Well, I had an extensive early morning film session with my basketball team, my sophomore team that I coach over at Richfield High. So my day started with early mornings of basketball and video. And that's
All
it.
right.
And
Hold
then I
on.
came, and so we were supposed to do a 2 hour film session and a 2 hour practice, but instead we watched film for 4 hours and ate donuts and drank juice because that's what we do.
All
So we
right.
had to study ourselves.
I'm getting word that your mic is kind of low, so I'm trying to fix the levels just to make sure that
Okay,
everyone is hearing us. All right. Let me put this back. Now he's muted. Now you're muted.
I muted.
Queen, hang in there. We're coming up next to you, but we want to make sure we get all this right. I can hear
All
myself
right,
fine. Frank, go ahead and
let me. Uh,
no, go ahead. Hold on. Keep going. It's my fault. Just keep talking. I know this is my fault. So don't worry about it. I got you. I got you. I got you.
How's that?
All right. Please speak for me
Is
again.
that better? Are we
All
good?
right. Dadey, can you hear him now?
Testing.
Yeah. We got you. All right. Yep.
All
We
right.
got you. We got you.
I like this.
It was my fault. It's always my fault. Don't worry about it. Let me just bring Sheba in here because I feel like we are just all over the place. So I'm bringing you in now. I'm bringing you.
I was about to leave. You know how the
What's up?
students do when the professor is late. Professor got 15 minutes before those students be out the door, boy. I was like, 2:18. I'm about to go take my shower. I just got off the plane seeing Frank. I just saw him.
Yes, ma'am. How you doing?
I just landed from Minneapolis, just landed and came and sat down.
What?
Yeah, I was just there.
You were just in Minneapolis?
For a week.
Now I can't hear you, Sheba.
I visited her and had lunch and
For
everything.
a week.
Yeah, watched them eat.
Did you know that, Frank?
Yes, I saw her.
He was there. He saw. We hang up. We were hanging out for. He came to have lunch with us at the Lowry.
Yep. So yeah, I got a chance to be blessed by the Queen's.
It seems like I was there at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you were.
Where are you? You're in LA, yeah.
So what was you doing there? Tell me what you were doing.
Nosy ass. We are curating the first ever Black History Month event put on by the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Department for the city of Minneapolis at the convention center. So we spent all day yesterday at the convention center doing the walkthrough, getting food and craft services ready, walking through the rooms, breaking out what are going to be the workshop rooms. We went and saw the theater and was deciding on the theater and what acts we're going to have, what workshops and what panels we're going to have, what people we're bringing in. We've spent all week on the phone just ringing like crazy, trying to put together something that we were trying to get the city of Minneapolis to give us the green light on back in August. We're trying to do it in 8 weeks, and now we're down to like 6 or something like that. So it's definitely crunch time. We were up basically 24 hours a day. And last night we went to the Union and had dinner at the Union in Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis. And then they went to go hang out. I think they went to a drag show at the Roxy, and I was beat. I just couldn't do it. I was just like, I can't do it anymore. So I got in touch with Aisha, who does massages that you gave me, Frank.
Okay.
You know? Yeah, from the Women's Center.
Yep.
She is amazing. Like amazing. Yeah, so I need lymphatic massages every day for about the next month. I had some elective surgery.
Can you still see her? Oh, I can't
Yes.
see.
Yeah, I can see and hear you. You're a little blurry, and it doesn't seem like
stuff is switching all over the place. All right, hold on a second. Let's step back because I need to introduce you, Queen Sheba. Just because you're only going to be here for a little while with us, so I want to make sure that everyone knows who you are. This wonderful document up that your assistant sent to me. So we all right, because if you don't know who Sheba is, she is and was adopted by a white family in 1977
Funny.
in
That's the first
Jackson,
thing.
Michigan, at the age of 2.5. After a lot of red tape, the family then moved to Detroit, Michigan, where Sheba grew up, a brown girl in the throes of the Black Power movement of the 80s, in the heart of the cities, while navigating her identity as young Black woman, being raised by people that did not look like her, but loved her through her formative years. At the age of 15, Sheba and her split, and she was returned to Edgewood Acres, a youth home in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where Sheba graduated high school with honors and went on to become an award scholar at Old Dominion University, and then later went on to earn her MFA from Queen's University in Charlotte. Queen Sheba is a 2021 Grammy nominated spoken word artist, poet, a 2-time NAACP Image Award nominee, Atlanta Creative Loafing People's Choice Spoken Word Artist of the Year, a recent candidate for the Atlanta Public School Board, professor of creative writing at Clark Atlanta University, and Sheba also received the Gentleman's Foundation Gentlewoman of Artistry of the Year award for her work in the LGBT community for HIV. Whoo, girl. Now, until I actually read all of that, like in one spot, I already had a tremendous respect for you, but then all of a sudden it just shoot through the roof. So tell us a little bit about you, how you got on this path to where you are now, and start by telling me the favorite thing that happened to you this week.
This week, I really enjoyed the snow in Minneapolis. I grew up in Detroit, and I'm glad it was only a week. Like I'm glad I don't live there. But I was excited about the snow. It's just, different from Atlanta. We're in the South and we don't get snow often, but I grew up with the snow in Detroit and I missed it as a child. And I just really was like, oh, I want to make snow angels and snowmen. And, we didn't get a chance to do any of that stuff. But we'll be back in like 4 weeks. So I'm like going to make a full on snow family in the front yard of the Airbnb and do snow angels and stuff like that. So one of my favorite things to do is traveling. So, and I haven't been to Minneapolis in about 3 years. And so it was nice to be back to Minneapolis. It was nice to connect again with Frank and see familiar faces and just know that, spoken word as a genre is progressing. And so that was one of the favorite things I did this week. And then meet up with Aisha giving me these amazing massages that I so desperately needed. And all of that is gold, is gold because it's connections. It's connections. And, as my friend always said, well, I don't know if we're friends, but someone I know always says, she's always like, your wealth is in your relationships. And I know that's kind of a general cliche, but it's so true. And I appreciate you, Frank, for making those connections. I had a really good week. I enjoyed going to Restoration Hardware Rooftop for brunch. That was really dope. I enjoyed going to the Big Hen. Is it called the Big Hen? What was it called? The hen house, Big Hen.
Yeah, the hen house or something like that. I know what you're talking about. Breakfast food.
Right. Breakfast food. We went to this Italian restaurant. Dang, I forgot the name.
I don't know what you're talking about, so I just get to sit here and smile.
That was the best service. Hope. No, not Hope. Hope was the breakfast spot.
Yeah, that's the breakfast spot.
Yeah. Dang, I forgot the name of the Italian spot. So, I am a foodie on the inside and I try to exercise it all the way. So but anyway, I don't know how I got here. By God is how I got here. I just make what I think are the best decisions for me at the time. And, I started doing spoken word 23 years ago, 22 years ago, this July. And, I've made mistakes along the way, burned some bridges, threw a match over my shoulder a couple times. But I've learned a lot. And at this phase of my life is overall teaching phase. So it's, It's teaching the younger poets who is cutting their grass in January, but it's teaching the younger poets kind of how to navigate through the spoken word thing, but also learning from them, because spoken word and its platforms are completely different. And I hate to sound like an old head, but they're completely different than they were 20 years ago. They're completely different than they were 10 years ago, where TikTok and Instagram can make you instantly famous and can get you these bookings and a reach of the entire world, where before, if you weren't going to every open mic possible or every feature possible, then people didn't see you unless you happened to get on a TV show and you were lucky enough to get on the Apollo or BET or whatever show was allowing poets at the time, HBO, things like that. VH1 or was another one that was allowing poets to come on. Even Arsenio Hall, when he came back for a minute, had a couple poets on. So Monique had poets on her show. So it's just, it's just watching this whole genre morph and change, and, trying to stay popping and relevant in it while we are aging chronologically, but also maturing too.
Did you freeze up?
Yeah, she's frozen and has a huge delay.
I noticed that.
Yeah, she's totally frozen.
It to me.
You're frozen. We can't understand.
Frozen. We can't hear you.
I don't know why. I'm having such a hard time with my video today, but this me on.
We have good internet in Minnesota.
Here again.
Hey, my Atlanta internet is popping right now. I'm sitting right next to my box.
Good on Twitch.
So. This is my fake house in the background.
Yeah, I think.
Unfortunately, this is my real one.
My real one looks like your real one.
Yes, my desk area is a little messy. Are you there, Tawana?
Listen, Queen, we're gonna keep it with you. So here you. Oh, this is crazy.
This is funny, yo. This is hilarious. Let me see. Tawana, you gotta learn to laugh at this.
Hear you.
Who's your producer?
I see you over here, but I don't see you over here. This is crazy. So I'm going to look over here. All about it.
Tawana, your sound is cutting in and out for us.
Frank, you might as well do the interview, because I can't hear her or see her. I mean, I can see her, but she's completely frozen, and I can only hear like every 20th word.
Tawana, you're cutting in and out bad sonically, and you're freezing.
Not happening.
Is this
normal? Can you hear us?
She seems really frustrated, like this isn't normal.
Yeah.
Let me take this off. I don't know what's going on. I've got to figure this out here. Sure where the issue is. We're going to bring them in one at a time. I can't. Still a little bit choppy, but come on, we're gonna bring Sheba back in next. Because I tell you what. All right, maybe this will work. This is a new look. What do you think? You to speak first, because I just want to make sure that I can hear you.
Let me clean my computer up. Let me see if that'll help.
This is terrible.
I don't know. I'm fuzzy. You're fuzzy.
I can't hear you at all.
Tawana, you're fuzzy for me, but Sheba, you're clear.
Oh, all right. Am I?
Yeah, and your voice is fine, Tawana. You're in and out. Is it snowing in Arizona?
Come on, Tawana, you got to be on your toes. You got to learn to make jokes.
I think maybe it is snowing in Arizona. Lord have mercy.
All right. I've cleaned. Oh, that looks better to me.
This was supposed to be fun on a whole different not have all this crap.
Honey, you gotta laugh at the tragedy
because this is like the mini Poets of the City reunion. So Sheba, let's go back. Let's talk about
back.
Your I can hear a little bit better now. So let's see if it's getting better.
No,
Sheba,
we're not going back. I already spoke for like 20 minutes. Hell no. Y'all better rewind the
story, Tawana.
Then start where you
whole story while you were frozen. So they better rewind this shit and watch it again. You better edit it or something. Hell no. We can move forward. We definitely not going back in life, metaphorically or physically.
Lord have mercy. Live, Sheba. There's no editing. That's why I do it this way. There's no editing involved. This is live. You either sink or swim right away. We're kind of sinking right now. All right. So, right. Sheba, for real though. Take us where you left off, please.
Negro. All right. Where was I? You know what? I am name dropping. My friend Malcolm Jamal Warner. He does not say the word nigga, and I didn't before I moved to Atlanta. I was like, oh my God, how could you say that word? Is so appalling, right? But then you get down here, long enough, and people use nigga like a comma. You know, that's how they talk, right? So I unfortunately got into the habit of it and got way too comfortable with it. But the last year or so, as Malcolm and I have been building our friendship, not that we're besties, and I don't want to misrepresent like he's at my house every day or anything, but we are friends. And he's sent me some things that are really compelling to stop saying the word. So I went to Dominican Republic in December for 3 weeks, and they say mi amor like a comma. They don't even really have the word nigga in their vocabulary because it's not a word that they use. It's not in their vernacular, right? That's really an American thing. Mm-hmm. So every other word, they're like, mi amor, mi amor. I said, you know what? I'm going to do 2 things, and feel free to join me because I think this will be fun. I'm going to take a current hip hop song. I don't even know which one yet. Maybe one from Future. And I'm going to rewrite the song, same words that I'm going to give credit to whoever the hip hop artist is. And I'm going to replace all the words that are nigga with mi amor, and then read it, during a feature and see what the difference is and what the impact difference is, instead of being like nigga, 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 just say mi amor in replace of that word. And so I've been trying to practice even, in conversation to break myself from saying the word nigga. There's arguments on both sides. People are like, oh, it's just a term of endearment. You give it power if you blah, blah, blah. And the other side is, no, it's really a demeaning word and we shouldn't use it at all. And I think I want to be on the side of not using it all, because it's one of those things that if it doesn't make a difference either way, then let's stick to the positive, right? It's like, if you're saying it doesn't make a difference either way, so let's just then stick to the positive. So I'm going to start using mi amor in replace of the word nigga. So mi amor. Yeah. So I
love that idea. I love it. Let's.
I think all 3 of us should pick different hip hop songs and then come back on the show and present them like in a month or so and be like, especially around Valentine's Day. I mean, I think that would be a perfect way to, show people that if it doesn't make a difference, if you're saying, hey, this is how I talk to my friends and they know it's a term of endearment. Okay, we'll turn the term of endearment, try it this way. We're not saying you're wrong because everybody's perspective is different and we're not going to change everybody's mind. But if you're saying it doesn't make a difference, then let's just try it this way. And then you, after that, decide what you want. Because it's the same when Malcolm Jamal Warner was sending me these things, like, these talks and these professors and these intellectuals are saying, hey, don't use this. And this is the history behind it. And why would we do this? And then my friends who live here in the South, they're like, man, bump that, and I'm just like, okay, well, if it doesn't make a difference, let's then err to the side of positivity. So, and then again, positivity is subjective, right? So, but anyway, so Mia Moore,
Everything is subjective.
Is what? Yeah, right, exactly. So, where do you want me to go back to? Where do we want to start from? Oh, you on delay?
Hey, let's just go back to poetry versus hip hop. Let's do that. Let's start with poetry versus hip hop. Tell me how that all began, and let's get into the event that you have coming February 12th.
Okay. So, poetry versus hip hop in this coming September will be 8 years old. And it started because I was working at the famous Apache Cafe downtown Atlanta as their very underpaid booking agent. I was still in grad school and I needed a job and I wanted it to be my field. I didn't want to go work at a restaurant. I did that already. And even though Apache is a restaurant, but I was like, oh, this would be cool, learning how to do booking and managing and things like that for a club. And oh my God, it was high stress, high activity, but it got me into being able to produce shows and understanding how the whole thing worked. And now fast forward, I'm helping my friend Casey Ellerby. I'm her executive assistant to putting on one of the largest Black History Month events in the country, like at the Minneapolis Convention Center. And she was worried about me being her executive assistant because as far as, artist resume, mine is definitely lengthier than hers, but she got the opportunity. I said, you are tripping. I'll take this opportunity to learn with you and to build with you. And so now we're kind of, I joke all the time that we're kind of doing the Issa Rae, Adam Sandler thing where it's like, put your friends on. You know what I mean? It's like Issa Rae said it best. She was like, stop emailing me. Stop asking me to put you on, put you in my shows. Do your own show and put your friends on. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. Right. So now Casey helps me. Her nickname is Jersey because she's from Jersey. So Jersey helps me with poetry versus hip hop. And I have helped her with, I'm helping her with this one. And then she hired me to DJ for Angela Davis in Burlington, Vermont, when she was putting on the 4-day Juneteenth event. And that was like their second one ever. And it blows my mind that we're saying this in 2022 and 2023, that Minneapolis's municipality has never put on a Black History Month event. Frank, I know Frank has done them. I know local artists have put them on before. Please take that down. No, please take that down. I'm dead serious.
I don't think she can hear you.
Taking it down.
Okay. All right. So that person is no longer with our company. And then it was not amicable. So how Poetry versus Hip Hop got started, the young man in that photo was actually our marketing person at Apache Cafe. And I called my friend Moses West, who did a show called Poetry versus Hip Hop in Jacksonville. He did a one-off, right? And so I called him and I said, yo, do you mind if I do a Poetry versus Hip Hop here in Atlanta? He was like, I don't care, whatever. I'm on to other stuff. And I was like, boom, cool. It blew. So I asked the young man that was in that photo, I was like, hey, do you want to do this? We did it because there was a blank date on the club calendar. Really, it was just an open mic. We called up one poet to perform, and then we called up an MC. It was really, we were just kind of making it up, right? It is by no means in the format that it is today, or the structure or the intellectual property. So I say that to say, because with all great things, there is drama. And I asked, so the DJ at the time then became my girlfriend, rest in peace to DJ Know That. And then she and I built Poetry versus Hip Hop as a company. And give thanks. And then the young man in that photo didn't want it to be a company. He just kind of wanted it to be a free-for-all situation. We were like, nah, I see the potential in this, right? I see it coming. And so unfortunately we all fell out and it wasn't amicable. I definitely can give you I'm sorry that she gave you that. We can definitely give you a newer flyer or poster. I think I might have one that I can upload.
No. It's okay. My apology. I am not properly prepared I am still working here, but I'm just trying to find something that
So
I
go
can
to
share with
my,
the audience. They have a better idea of what is
go
happening.
to,
Hold on.
I'm trying to think. Can I add an attachment to the chat? I don't think I could
Yes,
add
you
an
can.
attachment. Oh, comments. Let me see. Comment. I don't see where I can add an attachment. Oh, I'm not logged in per se to StreamYard.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know what? I'm
Just
gonna
put it, yep, right in the chat where you were talking earlier.
I'm gonna text it to Frank real quick. But anyway, so long story short, yeah, that's our website, which is being updated. So we did poetry versus hip hop every weekend for about 6 years, and then DJ Nodat was diagnosed with cancer December 27th of 2019, and then she passed away a year ago, January 3rd, 2022. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring poetry versus hip hop back because it was definitely our thing together. We traveled all over the world with it. We were invited to Jamaica, Toronto, and South Africa pre-pandemic. All right, here's two, Frank. Oh shoot, that's a video. Sorry, is it a video? Yep. But then here's a flyer. So I texted to Frank if you can drop them in there. But so when she passed away, I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring it back, but people were like, rest in peace to DJ Know That. We understand this is something that y'all built. So in an effort to carry on her spirit and then elevate poetry versus hip hop to its next level, I said, you know what? Let's make a nonprofit arm for women of color to ensure that they get their breast exams and focus on masculine presenting women. That does not mean gay or lesbian, but I want to be very clear that I am a lesbian. And of course, we were together for a long time, but I don't want anybody to feel excluded. And so where our focus is women of color and our focus is masculine presenting women, because sometimes it is so funny. I watch so many masculine presenting women on TikTok, and they'll do funny videos about like, what, I have to get a breast exam. And I'm just like, and that really just goes to the point of sometimes even as Black people, we never want to go to the doctor. We feel like we can cure everything with Robitussin, right? What in that Chris Rock's thing, like feel like you can cure everything with Robitussin and NyQuil, but we have got to go to the doctor if we feel like,
And
especially
Pepto-Bismol. Can't forget the pink stuff.
Everything, right? Pepto-Bismol and right. So, and then I also want to point out that DJ Know That was not even 40. So it's not a matter of, let me wait until I'm 40 to start getting my mammograms. Definitely get that done when you're going to get your physical every year. And if you happen to feel a lump while you're in the shower or you're making love or you're with your partner or your partner feels you, just get it checked out. And hopefully it's nothing. It's just, yes. And hopefully it's nothing. It's just a benign cyst. They could take it out. But yeah, I'm not going to cry on your show. But when we found her cyst, it was like May or June of 2020. No, couldn't have been in 2020. It was 2019. So May or June of 2019. And I happened to be performing on Married to Medicine. And the woman the doctor is an OBGYN. And I was like, I know we're taping, but can I bring my wife in?
I know, I saw that one. I saw that.
Yeah. So I was like, yo, she was like, yo, bring her in. Right. And then still I was like, dang, I'm not gonna be able to afford her. Like she's this big superstar. And I should have listened to my gut and she just went in. Right. But so then we were doing poetry versus hip hop, like every weekend we were too busy. And then the lump grew. And when DJ Know That brought it to my attention in October, we were like, no, we're going to the doctor now. So by the time we went to the doctor, had tests, went back for another test, and we were still putting on these huge productions. We were putting on a Christmas production for Tamika Harper at the time. We were still running poetry versus hip hop. And then she's trying not to be stressed out, waiting for the results, right? So we go back on December 27th of 2019, and they're like, you're in stage 3 of breast cancer. And we're like, what? How? So what I've learned, I'm no doctor, but what I've learned is that we all have cancer cells in us, and it just depends on your lifestyle, genetics, and how you treat yourself if they ever get flared up.
Yeah.
So I just say that all that, long story short, I say all that to say we started a nonprofit arm, and I say we, meaning me, but in the spirit of DJ Know That. And she's never going to leave like our website. She's always, being honored in some sort of way. And it definitely is because of her that that the idea for this nonprofit for masculine presenting women of color and everybody, but it's because of her that it's like, okay, let's make sure that these masculine presenting women are taking themselves to the doctors or having their partners take them. And, it's not a joke, and making sure that they get tested. And if there's nothing wrong, then great, awesome. But we want to catch it and early as possible. And I definitely do believe that if we weren't too busy with Poetry versus Hip Hop and had gone in May or June when we first felt that lump, they would have been able to cut it out and would have kept it moving. And so Poetry versus Hip Hop, what, like I said, we were in 30 cities. We were in New York, Philly, anywhere you could think of, Dallas. The pandemic hit. And so with the pandemic hit, and then her cancer got worse, and then ultimately she passed on. And then people were like, you know what? Let's bring Poetry versus Hip Hop back. Let's make it bigger and better. Let's, make it so the world can see it. There's more now. There's TikTok. You can travel all over the world. The world is open back up. Let's do something that's meaningful. So now I do productions, or I get myself involved with things that have a moral compass. So it's no longer like, oh, Sheba, come and do this feature. It's like, what does it mean? What are we helping? What's the cause behind it? And I think that's way more important than chasing a check. But I think you can do both. I think you can definitely be paid as an artist and have it be healthy, and also have a moral compass as well. So that's where we're at with Poetry versus Hip Hop. So we relaunched October 30th, and we're doing our next one February 12th here in Atlanta at City Winery. And I was actually just counting the tickets while we're waiting and backstage, and we're almost sold out, and it's not even February yet. So people are hearing, are already rolling back in so now I also have a new social media management team. I don't even have to worry about it anymore. And they're doing such an excellent job. People are rolling back in our inbox like, yo, come back to LA, come to Chicago, come da 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 da. And so I, like to brag that we're the first Versus, because Versus wasn't even around before us. So we started in 2015 Versus, and then, they came later over the pandemic. So I want to credit us being the first Versus show. And people now, there's so many Versus shows. There's like peanut butter versus jelly and blah, blah, blah. But I will say to anybody that's watching this, or whoever will see this, that we do own and have copywritten Poetry versus Hip Hop. So any variation of Poetry versus Hip Hop versus rap, poets versus MCs, my attorney, Kyle Paskey, will be sending you a letter. I'm not going to curse on your show, but I'll just say a bleep letter. So that's where we're at. We're super excited to be back on the road. We were invited to CIAA.
You heard it here. This is where it all started.
Yeah. So we'll be in CIAA, which is in Baltimore this year, Sunday, February 26th. We will be in Charlotte in April, and in September, we're doing a huge 8-year anniversary show in Atlanta with a 850 person theater during the city's Elevate Atlanta Festival. And we're going to be in Jamaica at the end of the year on November 3rd. So if y'all want to hop on the show, you got to be dope. We'd love to have you. Thank you. Yes, there we go. That's what's up. So this is the All Black Everything, All Black Love event that we're having February 12th. And I think we're going to add on another show, actually, because I want to say, where are we? I don't even know where the tickets went, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a little blurry, but it's a little blurry.
It's in there.
But it looks good.
Oh yeah, those are a little blurry. But yeah, so Team Poetry versus Team Hip Hop. and it's an all positive, friendly show. But they do go ham. There's no language restriction or anything like that. But it's not the dozens. They're not trying to take each other down. It's the poets do their best poem, and then the MC does their best poem, and then the audience chooses the winner, and somebody goes home with a cash prize. So, what's up? I know you said you retired, Frank, but I want to do a poetry versus hip hop Minneapolis. I think that shit would be dope.
Yeah, I remember we were in works to do that, and then the pandemic hit, and so and then everything that you just talked about kind of took the direction that it took. So spring, for me, basketball season, it's hard for me to do anything because I'm in the middle.
Let's do something in the summer when it's popping in Minneapolis.
Yeah, we'd have to, the summer is the best time to do an outdoor indoor. So like to do an outdoor event, and then if the weather's bad, have an indoor spot on standby, because we just never know what we're gonna get. But lately, a lot of the movies in the park type thing have been hitting in the summer in the Twin Cities, and lots of people are filing into parks on lawns with mosquito repellent and watching movies, or watching old school movies, so it's definitely something that I know could work here. I think would be a good draw, so we can definitely make it happen. That's it'll give me an excuse to get back and get
come on back,
producer hat back on.
Yeah, let's do it. Poets of the City, let's go.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, we did LA twice. We did the Get Down Festival in LA, but I said,
I'll be back in the Twin Cities by the time this summer comes too.
Okay, that would be great. So we're taping, I want to say this correctly. We're taping to submit to Netflix on February 12th. Netflix is not going to be there. I want to make that very clear. But we're like, you know what? We're back. We're better. We're stronger than ever. So we're getting the we went on the Netflix website. We have our production team that is getting all these expensive cameras, and we're taping to submit to Netflix and saying, hey, this is what we got. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but we'd like to do something of this tournament style on Netflix, and I think it would be dope.
That would be dope.
Yeah. So I think they'd be interested.
My middle schoolers this week told me, because I told them, I was like, I still use words like,
so can I
they're like,
words like what?
Like dope and fresh.
I know, me too. And the other day on my Instagram video, I was trying to replace man or something, and I was like, bruh, and that doesn't even feel right. But I was trying to be, of the language of the times, and I was like, bruh, I think I was about to say, yo, man, or something like that, and then I was like, yep, bruh. And I was like,
everything sounds old.
Everything sounds old, and I have to ask my students, because I'm a part-time professor at Clark. I'm like, yo, what are the current words for this month? Because they change every month. The language of the internet, the language of TikTok, and the language of the students change every month. Lit, they don't even use lit anymore. Lit is old.
That's why I work in middle schools.
Old.
That's why I work in middle schools, because I ask the 13-year-olds, because they always know.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry, Tawana. What were you about to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I want to leave a little nugget. I know you got a hard stop here. A few minutes, Sheba, but this is, like I said earlier, the mini Poets of the City reunion. But I thought maybe I could plant in y'all's brains to have a real Poets of the City reunion during Poetry Month this year. What do you think?
You mean in person or on your show? Do you mean in person?
I'll make sure this shit works better the next time, though. This will work.
Oh, you're saying on your show or in person?
Right here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm down.
Not in person.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great.
That's gonna be fun. And I'll make sure again. I'm gonna make sure this is working properly.
So I'd like to ask Sheba a question. So while we're talking Poets of the City, so the Super Show, it was you, Talam AC, Sekou the Misfit, Georgia Me.
Oh
yeah. Sonia Renee.
Oh wow.
Dan Vaughn.
In over 10 years, in over a decade. I've been physically
Georgia Me.
Right, it's been a long time since I've seen Sonya too. Dan Vaughn.
He lives down the street from me now. I mean, down the street. He's in Alabama.
Right?
But
oh, is he in Alabama? I couldn't remember if he was in Alabama, Mississippi. Krista Bell.
Whoa.
Yeah, and may he rest in peace, her cousin Will. And also my girl Mahogany.
Yeah, I haven't seen Mahogany
so much. I haven't seen Mo Brown since then.
I haven't seen Mo Brown in more than 10 years. I don't think I've seen Mo Brown since, I don't know. You know what? I went to New York. This guy randomly from Australia found me on the internet, flew me to New York to interview me for his grad thesis.
Wow.
Again, something I could have been kidnapped or murdered. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll come. I was literally in an Airbnb with a camera and he interviewed me. Never met him before. But Mo Brown was having a show that night. And it wasn't even like we connected. I just went to her show. And I don't even remember when that was. That had to be 12, 13, 14. It was a minute. It was more than 10 years ago.
I still say that cast, to be old school again, was more dope than the Def Poetry Jam Broadway cast. I feel like that was one of the illest casts of poets, especially for the time where everybody was at in their careers. I feel like that was like the illest cast of poets ever put together. Like,
I think that Def Poetry did an excellent job of showcasing a range of poets to people that would have never seen spoken word. But it's just like the Olympics, right? It's just like there are still other poets that it never got to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just, there's always a faster runner or higher jumper. It's not even about comparison because I think we're all different and we bring something different to the table. I just think that like Talam was never on Def Poetry. I was never on Def Poetry. And people started to introduce me like I was on Def Poetry. And actually there's a correction and that's my fault for not editing that bio. And really the Grammys sent me an email because they saw it in my signature. So I'm not Grammy nominated, which I thought I was. So it was an innocent mistake. So Teresa Songbird, myself, and Stacey Ann Chen are on Robert Glasper's album, F Your Feelings. And that got nominated for a Grammy. So we thought everybody on the album was Grammy nominated. And it was, me and Teresa, we put in our signature, we put it on our feet. We had a Grammy listening party, all this, like we were like, oh my God, so with Robert's permission. But then I was emailing the Grammys about something because I do a lot of work with them here in the city. And they were like, yeah, we looked you up and you're not Grammy nominated, but we do see that you were on the Grammy nominated album, but you can't say that. And I was like, Mother Mia Moore.
You're not in the gang, you was affiliated.
Yo, my heart sank. I text Teresa and she never replied. She probably was like, bump that, I'm still doing it. But she performed on the Trumpet Awards and you should have her on your show next one so she can do it justice, but she just got a book deal for a book that she wrote and illustrated, You So Black. So people are doing amazing things. So doing some amazing things. Yeah. So yeah, I agree, Frank. That's a strong cast right there.
It was fun.
It was fun. And I understand moving on in your life. I just encourage you because it seems like the city of Minneapolis doesn't have that. I would just encourage you maybe do something once a year at least. In that way.
Fun. And me being on the outside looking in, I didn't get into poetry until y'all. Until I met Frank, really. So it was very, very fun for me.
Awesome. Yeah.
Good.
I'll give you a few more minutes since you were having technical difficulties. It wasn't your fault. If you like.
And girl, I'm still having technical difficulties, but I'm trying to figure it out. I've got 5 monitors up here. The sound works fine, and this one is not working fine, and this one, believe you me. But Mercury, I think, out of retrograde, so it'll be better next week.
That's crazy. I got a laptop. It's working just fine.
I know. Mine just I just have a laptop and I've just got my little fake background of my.
I was going to say, you really coming up, girl. You got a baby brand in the background, a fire in the place.
I was going to say, my house ain't no slouch. Y'all just don't need to see. Let me see. How do I turn this thing up?
Right.
Let me see. Remove. Let me see. Oh, no, I don't even know how to do it.
I was like, wait a minute. Either I need to move to Atlanta and get on the scene. I need to holler at Sheba how I can make that big poetry money because I want a baby brand.
Well, let me say this. I will say that over the pandemic, I applied for every grant in the world, and I kept the spreadsheet. And I will just say that I was awarded over $200,000 in grants over the pandemic, and I still got some of it left. And I've been making the money work for me. So although this isn't my house ain't no slouch at all. I love decorating, and I'm closing on a house this Friday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I tell people, like, I get it. I'm a Leo. I love stuff. I like bags. I like purses. That's never going to go away. But every now and then you got to prioritize and buy some property. Even if I know you out in LA, I know this shit is sky high, but buy yourself a little loft, you know what I mean? And then you build on it from there. And again, I'm no guru. I'm no financial guru. I just watch what other people are doing. And I'm thinking about my future. I'm 40s at this. And I just put on Facebook, I'm about to grind hard for the next 11 and a half years, and then I'm retiring. Retiring for a poet means I'm still going to tour and do poems, but I don't want to have to bust my ass from the time I'm 60 to 87. I feel like I'm going to die around 87. I don't know. That's just a number I've always had. But 87 is good for me. So I'm just like, I don't, from 60 to 87, I want to just travel and chill. So, travel and do poems and show up like Nikki Giovanni and Nikki Finney and be a guest professor at universities and get honorary PhDs all over the place. That's
the way to go.
Right. You know what I mean? And maybe still work at a university, but not like, let me bust my ass every day, every night, losing. That shit is like, where's our retirement plan? We don't have a poetry retirement plan unless you make one.
There's a conversation about that going on here with the arts organization that is actually writing grants to help set up retirement, like basically pensions for artists. And
that's what I want to do. Like, I have 4 contract employees. I don't pay them enough for them to only work for me, but it's decent. It's decent, but I still have to make the money to pay them. So it's a lot of learning from wealthy people. And because I live in the Black Mecca, I'm learning from wealthy people that look like me.
Right.
Especially women. They are getting the bag out here in Atlanta. And I'm excited to be able to say, hey, poets, these are some other things to do to supplement our income so that you don't have to take these shitty ass gigs all the time. Now, do it when you want to, but it's, not always the best look.
Absolutely. Well, I actually got my real estate license.
Hello. Hey, you're clear and we can hear you
now here in Arizona, and probably going to start working on getting it done in Minnesota too. And also, Queen, last year I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I am cancer-free now, just working to their former glory, hopefully better than they were before.
Give thanks. Congratulations.
Yes.
Well, congratulations. And then,
young lady, I know we have kept you. Thank you for joining
us. And maybe
us.
when we do Poetry versus Hip Hop in Minneapolis, you can, come on stage and tell us your story, and that's what we're doing now. So Poetry versus Hip Hop is no longer just, here's a show. So now we honor a person in every city. Every time we do a show, we honor somebody and say, hey, thank you for employing Black or brown people. It is the Poetry versus Hip Hop Enterprising Award. A lot of times we get awards for performing and for singing and for dancing and tap dancing. But are you a person that employs Black people? Have you thought about, the future? Like, what are you doing to help the Black and brown community? And it doesn't have to be in entertainment.
Right.
So our first awardee was Dres the Beatnik. And I awarded him because he made a hard decision to leave a club that he left Apache when the numbers weren't right. And he was like, you know what? I'm not going to just take this just because you're giving it. And then he started his own club and he employs Black and brown people. And I was like, yo, that's dope. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be some big ass club that's on the IG map. And our next awardee on February 12th is for Georgia Me, but not for her performance and poetry. She's gotten 1 million awards for that. I'm awarding her because she created Tamika Fest, and she employs Black and brown people during Tamika Fest. She employs Black and brown people to do her graphics, to volunteer, to make her t-shirts, and she sticks with them sometimes when it's not in her best interest. You know what I mean? And they're late and they don't produce what they're supposed to be producing. But she also has the wherewithal to say, like, hey, you know what, you guys, we got to do better than this. I'm going to hire somebody else. I'm going to get a manager, blah, blah, blah. And she's been doing Tamika Fest. I don't even know what year this is, 16, 18, 20, something like that. And to watch it grow from year one to, you know, I don't even know what year this is, 16, 17, 18, is just amazing. You know what I mean? So it's about being enterprising. And Frank, you know, with you, with the Poets of the City, you employ Black and brown people. You're producing shows for Black and brown people in a city that's mostly white people and that doesn't get, you know, talked about. You said, you know, and hey, here's a show for us. We're not going to exclude anybody because money's green. If you want to come and watch the show, cool. But this is a show to showcase you all these amazing artists that you may never get to see because we stuck way the fuck up here in Minnesota. You know, so I think that's amazing.
And still don't see them, right? So,
right.
Like for real, like that's you know, that's when you talk about, you know, me getting back to doing what I was doing. My whole mission was to expose like all of these super dope, talented spoken word artists. And there's networking, like you said, it wasn't to be exclusionary, but there were places where non-Black artists could come and get a crowd and a lot of the Black community here didn't even know those places existed because it's not where we frequent. So I said, I want to do something to introduce this craft and the amazing artists that are doing it, the professional artists that are doing it, to the Black community here. And it worked and it was awesome. But I also made sure that I went and got really quality artists and people that were not just really good, had one or two good poems, but people that if they never did a poem, if I just hired them to talk to people for 45 minutes, it would be really entertaining, right? I hired entertainers who happen to be poets,
right?
Which there's a difference,
you
know, and I think that's really important. And I think in teaching the craft, I try to teach my students that this is an entertainment art form. We put it in an academic format. I teach public speaking, I teach poetic devices, I teach draft writing, but I also want those young people to know when people are listening to you for 2 minutes at a time, they expect to hear something that they value when you're done talking. And they expect to see something that they admire when they watch you deliver it. And so I think the crafting, because one of the reasons I wanted to bring these artists is I can't stand when people say, oh, I do poetry. Well, it's kind of like rap. Rap isn't a talent. I was watching this on one of the podcasts. I can't remember who said it was like, rap isn't a talent. It's a skill. Anybody can rap. The talent is, can you entertain and be engaging to
and I cannot rap. And even though I poem fast sometimes in my rants, people think I'm rapping. I'm like, I'm not. I cannot make door and floor rhyme.
But you could if you chose to learn that skill. Okay. And you would still be talented because people admire how you deliver your poetry. And you just don't choose to learn that skill.
True. You know, it's funny. My Uber driver just now, the one that just dropped me off before this podcast, he was like, oh, I'm going to come to your show, Poetry, because of course I'm always promoting it, right? He was like, I'm going to come to your show, Poetry vs. Hip Hop, and you need to put me on the list. And the fact that he thinks that it's not a production and that it's an open mic list, that's where people's mentality is. And I'm like, and what I said to him was, come see the show. I said, okay, I'll put you on the list. Come see the show. And then when they see it, they're like, oh, you know, they're like, oh, you know, when I'm ready. Yeah, when you're ready. You know, this is not a joke. So I want to stay on topic, but also veer left a little bit. Speaking of teaching and craft, this is going to be weird to ask you this right here, but why not? Would you be willing to teach a workshop during the Minneapolis Black History Month Expo?
Absolutely.
Cool. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you do that. So I know we were all going to have you perform a poem or two, but I think
is there any way?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I'm still glitching over here, but I want to ask the Queen before you leave. Is there any way we can get you to just do a little bit of something live for us? just a little bit.
Can you
Doesn't have to be
cash at me? Didn't
like
you just hear
big
my
or long, but
conversation?
40.
I know Tawana.
Yes.
Either she's glitching.
Give me your Cash App.
She
I'll
is
send
not
it to you.
she is not getting my jokes at all, and it's gonna sound real bleeped
It
up.
is glitching. I did not hear that.
I know it's gonna sound real bleeped up when people are watching it. They're gonna be like, "What is happening?" So funny. Let me see.
You could always do the Talam special and give like 8 bars and then be like, and if you want to hear the rest, you can purchase this.
Oh my God, right? Oh my God. Right.
The consummate businessman. But
I think everybody in the world stole that from him. And I just want to say, yeah, I definitely did. And I want to say that he is the originator of that, people. So wherever you think
wherever they saw it.
It wasn't from the person that you thought it was from.
Right.
At all.
He showed me so much on how to make money performing features.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Once he told me that he wrote a book based on him keeping track of where the heck is my here it is. Keeping track of his sales, I was like, oh, that's cool. So I wrote a book while I was in the Dominican Republic, and I don't want to give it away just yet. I hate to even say that right before, but what is this? Ooh, shoot. Okay, here it is. Here we go. All right, cool. I'll read your poem. So I have a book coming out called Clemency it's coming out on Valentine's Day. It's called Clemency: Poems to Help You Accept the Apologies You Will Never Receive. So I'm just gonna pick a poem out of here. Oh, here's a new poem. Actually, I just wrote. All right, this is called A Broken Thing. We are all drawn to a broken thing, we think. Okay. We think we can mend with duct tape analogies, half-attended therapy sessions, or fix with overbearing affection and checkout line gifts. Our nose high, eyes over spectacles, shoulder oscillation, taint us into believing just by effort alone, the broken should be healed from phalanges, too bony for comfort or too portly for deep tissue healing. If our waffling emotions manage to green the leaves, give splint to the branch, we will pedestal our vacillating efforts on the highest balcony and wave to the ghosts with bones below. Human evolution does not naturally provoke looking up. The CI Atlas first vertebrae in our neck prevents this. Mortals react to a squirrel in a tree, the heat on our crowns, a touch on the shoulder, only when our pattern is fractured by glass or sunlight, nails under our nails, knives or burning retinas. Do we or you shove our heels in the sand and turn square-shouldered away from kind eyes that withhold white, wet canines that fall past the upper lip? As luck would have it, whose I'm no longer sure, if our translucent scripted download of a love affair can't be absorbed into the dermis of our inactive victim, protected by shedding angel feathers, or won't, because although exhausted, are not yet raising our hands to join the undead, we snip any spotted discoloration slowly in their sleep, tiptoeing around the brittle bark of the root until we are standing alone with garden shears and elementary glue, sniffing until water concedes to the corner of our eyes and we have forgotten you completely.
Come on now. Come on now.
So Tawana, what did that poem mean to you? Because I want to make sure I was clear, because if not, I can rewrite it. What'd you get out of that?
Love it. Love it. Love it.
I don't think she can hear you. Did you hear her? Tawana, you there?
You talking to Frank or me?
You.
To you.
I heard bits and pieces of it, so I'm gonna let you.
Oh my God. I can't. We gotta do this whole podcast over. I promise. So
I'm so happy that you're my friends. I'm over here really trying to figure shit out, at least, to finish the show. Because once you leave, it's just I still want to get this Get right a little bit.
So the poem "A Broken Thing" is about how
No, I can't hear you at all. Are you just not talking? Wait.
I can hear her just fine. I hear you just fine, Queen Sheba. I hear you. Not only do I hear you just fine, I hear you in real time. Like your mouth moving and the words are coming together.
Yo, Frank, we should have just FaceTimed each other.
Sing amongst yourself while I try to figure this out.
Okay,
so yeah, do tell though.
Yeah, A Broken Thing was about how we think that we can heal someone else, and if we do a good job at it, then we brag about it, and we say, "Look what we've done." We're like, "Hey guys," waving to the ghosts with bones below, meaning like everybody else is a zombie. So if people are just going along their way, and what I was saying about human evolution, people don't look up naturally, and I had to look up the vertebrae, of course, and I encourage people all the time to like learn something new while you're writing, right? So the T1 in our bone in our neck doesn't necessarily make it natural for us to always be looking up. That's not our thing. Just like dogs. Well, damn, that's a horrible example.
I mean,
never mind, scratch.
But then it's not.
So we don't naturally just look up at things. That's why a lot of times, I watch a lot of crime shows. People hide shit that's up high because people don't look up. We look like at eye level, right? We hang paintings at eye level. So basically, what I was saying was, we don't look up to see what is going on. We're just zombies going in one direction, unless a squirrel or less the heat or less something distracts us. We're like, oh shit, where did that come from? Right? So, but if we heal somebody in a relationship, we brag about it. We're like, hey, we've healed them, if it goes well.
Right.
But if it doesn't go well, then we start to, because you can't control anything or anybody, right? That's the largest thing in emotional maturity that anybody has to learn. You cannot control anything that anybody does. And I will say that it was very recently that I learned this. So once you learn that and really accept it in your bones, that you can't control shit. You can't control what they say, but what you can control is how you move around it, positive or negative. So if people are doing things that are positive, then you stay around it, you hang around it, you with them, you make them your wife, you make them your husband, and you're like, hey, we're going to do this. If they're moving negatively, then you should move around it differently. Right. And that's hard when it's your friends and your family. And you're like, dang, I got to move around you. I got to do something different because you're not in alignment with how I'm moving. Right.
Right.
So A Broken Thing is about how humans, we're just going. We have our pattern, we have our day, we're just going. And oh shit, something's distracting us. And then we might get into a relationship. And then when we do, if you've learned that you can't control something and things go your way, then you're like, oh, we did it. Look, everybody. Hey, we're on Instagram.
Right.
We're in love. Look at all of our pictures. That's the waving from above. It's still to the zombies below.
Right.
But if it doesn't go well, then people who are emotionally immature, they start snipping away. So what I also learned recently was, and I didn't know this until a couple months ago, that instead of throwing a whole plant away that's browned, you can actually clip the brown with scissors off of a plant. I didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
So I have this peace lily that I thought I was going to have to throw out. And my friend was like, no, you could just clip the brown parts. And so I put that in the poem. So if things start to go wrong, little by little, and they start to brown, or they, then we start clipping away at the other person, which is negative. We start saying, you ain't shit. You don't do shit. These are the little clippings, right? We're like, we start to cuss them out and start to degrade them and start to gaslight them and you start to be narcissists and start to, and
which is often projection.
Which is always projection of low self-esteem, right? So then,
oh my goodness,
at the end of the poem where I'm saying, you're caught basically standing, holding the shears and sniffing, like you try to put somebody back together with child scissors and elementary glue is what I was saying. So what does it say? I don't even have it up anymore. But anyway, you're caught holding the child, the shears and the elementary glue, sniffing until your eyes start to water because you're getting high, right? And then until we forget about you completely. So basically, we tried to put you back together. It didn't work. Next. And that's how people have been treating people, and a lot to do with social media. And I do have to go in a second, but because I have a date. Yes. But a lot to do with social media is saying, oh, we're replacing. So you don't want to do it. Somebody else will do it. Somebody else will do it. And then you just don't feel safe.
Right.
And, you just don't feel safe. And even if the periods of time are long in between your actual relationships, on social media, it looks immediate. Oh, I was with so-and-so, now I'm with so-and-so. It's just like, so, and then according to, it's almost like, in the stories, the stories, who watches, there ain't no more stories, are there? So remember in the stories, they would be off for the summer to come back, and the child that was 3 is now in high school. And you're like,
how'd that happen? Right.
Hold on. Right. Exactly.
But what's funny is when you were describing your thought process behind the poem and your choice of words. Well, one, I had two thoughts. One was like, so I have a lot of these conversations about how poems get created with my middle school students, because I want to simplify for them that it's really kind of basic thoughts that become the best poems, right? But then also I was thinking, like, your description of your poem is a really good independent film, right? Like, it's too intellectual for somebody to be like, make a blockbuster out of. But I'm like, man, I can see this whole premise like being, you start putting real life scenarios and stories in the characters, and all of a sudden you got a film.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So within the last 12 months, I've heard that comment a lot. And I kind of knew it, my whole career, but a year and a half ago, I was in Panama on a poetry trip, and I was featured. And one of the people in the audience came up to me afterwards and said, "You have a lot of information in your poems." So that's one. And then, I'm on the radio now on V103, and I find myself trying to read my more simplistic poems because I know I'm reading over the radio to people that are just in their cars or happen to be listening, and they don't, and I'm assuming they don't want to take the time to dissect this poem, right? And then it was a third example I had. Well, sometimes, people just be like, oh, I need you to explain it. And I don't know if I'm explaining it because, like I said, if I need to rewrite it, which is perfectly fine with me, or if I can't one fish, two fish.
Well, let me ask you this.
Let me say this. One fish, two fish isn't for me.
Right. No, I get it. I think so. I've been trying to be very intentional about when I am writing for the page and when I'm writing for the conversation, or i.e. for the stage, because when I'm writing for the page, I'm intentionally metaphorical. I'm intentionally, abstract, because that's just that world, right? I mean, I'm not Langston Hughes, so his ability to write like really urban, direct, kind of street level stuff in a very complex way where academia goes, wow, that's heavy, and the brother on the block in the 20s was like, right on, right? So he was able to toggle both worlds with his writing.
And that's what I've been trying to accomplish in my world of academia, and me getting a master's in poetry, and then being, a professor at Clark, but also just being me.
Right.
I don't, I just want to think that we can be an intellectual in our poetry and still hit the common listener. I don't feel like I should, but there are people that are amazing at one fish, two fish. And I'm not being funny. I'm being dead ass serious, that when they one fish, two fish, I'm like, fuck, what? And I almost am like, why the fuck I can't one fish, two fish like that?
But that's
because
not who you are.
My one fish, two fish comes out like one fish, two fish. You know what I mean? Instead of it being an intellectual one fish, two fish.
Right.
It's almost like I'm either writing in one world or the other. And I want to be able to one fish, two fish intellectually.
Yeah, but here's also the part about that, and this is my critique on society, and I'm just gonna say it. We're not a very bright society. We're just not. There's just a lot of not very smart people walking around
and moving further and further away.
Right. That's the thing. Like, so, and so I literally beg my students, like, please don't grow up and be stupid. Please don't grow up and be. I'm like,
I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna be very vulnerable and say, and it's my ego. I want to repeat it again. It is my ego. I get really in my feelings when the one fish, two fish gets the recognition.
So and I'm like, really struggle with rap these days, huh?
I'm like 3 songs, 3 words in a whole rap song. Three words.
I mean, like, look, I ain't gonna front. The best hip hop concerts I've been to probably since, gosh, I don't even know, since like Water for Chocolate, I don't know, I went to Kendrick's concert, was thoroughly entertained. And I don't even know
why he didn't make me his girlfriend. He's ridiculous.
Look, and I went to J. Cole's concert and was thoroughly entertained. And I was like, I can't even think of who else I would go see. Like, I'll still go see KRS-One because I just.
What about Chance the Rapper?
What's that?
What about Chance the Rapper?
Chance.
I have not seen Chance live.
Me neither. But let me tell you something.
But he writes some stuff that's incredible.
Let me tell you something. I think the only other person that would be able to verify this is Godchild, and he lives in Virginia. Mm-hmm. Chance the Rapper came to our open mic in Norfolk, Virginia.
I believe he's a poet. But most Chicago rappers.
He started as him and Kanye started as a poet.
So they kind of.
Here's another fun fact I like to say is that, and who knows if Kanye might remember this because it was a big event, but in 2003, Kanye West opened for me at a poetry event in Miami, Florida.
Nice.
I was the featured poet, and he was a guest poet. He still was on the elevated, featured list, but I was the headliner. And he was, matter of fact, and how I got receipts is Rashida Bartley, and she's alive and well, and she lives in Atlanta. and I'm like, I got receipts. And I just wish, and maybe, in true, I wish Kanye and I would have been friends, because I think we would have made some great songs together. Mm-hmm. And maybe not thinking about the Kanye that he is now, but the Kanye that I met. Mm-hmm. I was stoked to meet, because he handed me, I wish I could find it. He handed me his Through the Wire mixtape, his CD in a slim case with a Xerox copy of it.
He was on his hustle. Yes.
Yes. And so it was him and Yazara that opened for me at Rashida Bartley's Funk Jazz Cafe. And they were always in battle with Jason Orr, who lives here, who owns and copyrighted the words Funk Jazz Cafe, because he throws these huge events, and he was always sending them cease and desist letters like, yo, stop using my name. All the way in Miami, right? So I have receipts upon receipts about the Kanye thing, and about what was the other thing about Chance the Rapper. I think Godchild would be the only other person, even if you remembered that. And I remember distinctly this girl coming up to me I don't even know who the girl was. She came up to me and she was like, yo, there's this guy in the audience. His name is Chance the Rapper. He's from Chicago. I think you would love him. And I was like, I quite go, put him up. And and that was it. And he went up and people loved him. And then I never saw him again. And I was like, and then when I saw him, being Chance the Rapper, I was like, oh shit, that's that dude from, and I just wish that more hip hop artists that made sense, Chance the Rapper, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, even Common, whoever, that we actually cross paths. I wish that we worked together more like poets work together.
I agree.
Hip hop artists work together. I wish they didn't see us as like this subculture, because I'm a whole fucking human being like you are. Like, and if you think I'm dope, then let's work together. Now, what I will say is that who did take a chance on a commercial rapper that did take a chance on that did take a chance on a spoken word artist was Rick Ross. So Rick Ross came to an event that Ingrid Baisden did. See, when you become 20 years into poetry, these are the amazing stories.
Ingrid B-side. Yeah. I know Ingrid. I love her.
So she threw this event, and and Rick Ross came to the poetry event, right? He wasn't even performing that night. I think we all went to like a party on South Beach afterwards together. And he came to the poetry event. He was like talking to me. He was like, yo, you're dope. Come to my house tomorrow and record in my studio. And did he ever answer the phone? I don't think he ever answered the phone. I never went over there. But what he did do, where he did take the chance on spoken word artist, was he was really good friends with Will. So he did put Will on his album. And I was like, at least it was somebody. You know what I mean? I'm like, thank you. I was like, because it's just, if you're dope, you're fucking dope.
That's it. You know? And we're all lyricists.
And we're all lyricists. And if you're and if you feel like, as a hip hop artist, this spoken word artist aligns with you and your Will and Rick Ross, perfect. That's a perfect alignment. Yeah, you know what I mean? Really so if Rick Ross thought he was dope and put him on his album, then bump it, put him on his, and then when people hear it, they're like, great. So when Robert Glasper, who's been an amazing musician and producer for years, which he blew up on the internet when he was talking shit about Lauryn Hill. That's how all of us then were like, who is this guy?
Right.
But he had already been out there. You know what I mean? Right. So then when we ran across him, I met him on a cruise, and I have a picture of him on our Poetry versus Hip Hop page holding up a Poetry versus Hip Hop t-shirt that he bought from us. And then so he came to our show. He was, I think, again, friends with Ingrid. Ingrid put together this on the Capital City Jazz Cruise, took a bunch of poets. He was like, yo, you're dope. And so when he came into town, he was like, yo, come and perform. I'm at City Winery, come and blah, blah, blah. Then he was like, come and be on my album. He just thought we were dope. And now, me, Teresa, and Stacey and Chen, which I'm sure Stacey and Chen is not even speaking our names, but whatever. I'm not a hater, right? So now we're on, but it's that y'all laughing, but it's that thing where it's like I'm still gonna praise people who don't praise me, right? Because if you're doing good work,
you're doing good work.
You're doing good work,
right?
You know what I mean? And Stacey Ann Chen has had, as a poet, she's had a show on fucking Netflix that Roseanne Barr produced for her. She's got this amazing spoken word career, So, and then Teresa now with her book, and then me with this, crazy elevation as well, doing stuff with the radio and just being all over the place with it and having these opportunities. It's like, this is amazing. He put all three of us Black women on his album, and we were the only poets. And I don't know if he did it on purpose or he just chose people that he liked. And then he just produced, Robert Glasper just produced Mir Suleiman's album, and now they nominated for a Grammy. Right. So I think Jay Ivy's going to win, but still, it's the fact that a nomination will change your life. So that's why I wanted to correct the whole nomination thing earlier, because a nomination alone will change your Mia Moore life.
No, that's
Mia
real.
Moore life.
Right. It. Before you go though, so you were talking about Malcolm earlier, Jamal Warner. And so I met him at the New Yorican. We were in, this is when he was first kind of transitioning and doing spoken word. So we're slamming against each other. We're in a slam at the New Yorican. I just happened to be in New York on vacation. I was like, I'm in New York, I'm going to New Yorican. They had a slam that night. So we end up tied at the end of the slam. So they make us have a 1-poem slam off. Now I do this. So I got poems for days, right? But I'm also like battling Theo in his hometown, right? So like, and at that point in time, the New Yorican doesn't really know him as Malcolm Jamal Warner, the poet. He's still Theo, right? And so I'm like, how am I gonna beat Theo in a slam off in his city, right? So he won. I still think but what's funny about that? So we bond. So this is why I have so much profound love and respect for that brother, even though we're not in communication. So, and we chopped it up like, backstage, how the slams go, whatever. So it was about a year later in August. This was like so it was like a year and a half later. My band, Edupoetic, were in, I want to say we were either in Vancouver, British Columbia, or we were in Seattle. And we're part of a group of headliners on the bill for a show out there on tour. And so we're getting ready to sound check. We're setting up our whole band, and we're closing. And there's a band finishing sound check right before. It's Malcolm Jamal Warner's band. But what I love, like, you know, he's been a celebrity for a long time. He runs into countless people. He remembered me on site. He was like, not just me, he remembered my name. He was like, yo, Frank. I was like, Malcolm, right? It was like we'd only encountered
each other. But you guys had a moment that was real in poetry history.
Right.
Well, first of all, he's a Leo, so he's compassionate, right? So, but he can also compartmentalize his acting career to and that probably, like you said at that time, he probably wasn't storing a lot of poetry memories yet.
Right.
So he probably didn't have a lot to have convoluted in his mind about who you were.
Right.
But I will say that even in our growing friendship, he surprises me every now and then, and he'll be like, yo, did you hear, and I'll be like, when do you have time to listen to people? And he'll be like, he was like, yo, did you hear, so you got to hear so-and-so's poetry. Especially during the first round of Grammy voting, which was in August. He was like, yo, did you hear so-and-so? You got to listen to so-and-so. He listened to fucking everybody's album in the spoken word category, at least enough where he was able to speak intelligently to. And I was like, you know what, let me go listen to, I was just going to vote on who I knew in there. I was like, you know what, let me go listen. And I went because he really made it a concern of his.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God. And he's, he has a little Leo air, to him, but he's really personable. Like
he is.
Surprisingly.
That's what I was getting at. He's a cool
surprisingly.
Dude. Yeah, he's a really cool dude.
Yeah. I have a Malcolm Jamal Warner story took too long, so I'll save that one for the next time.
Okay. I was about to say, go ahead, but I gotta get ready for my date, y'all. It's 5:40. I gotta go. I don't get free dinner.
5:40. Where are you at?
I mean, it's 3:40.
Where are you?
I'm sorry. It's 3:40. Sorry,
girl.
It's 3:40. I gotta be there by 5. You never know with Atlanta traffic. You can get there in 8 minutes or 80.
Right.
Yeah, especially if you have a little dusting of snow, like the whole damn city gets shut down.
Well, luckily today it's actually 6 degrees out, so it's actually nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, out here in Phoenix, that's my normal.
No, when I come back, I promise, Frank. When I come back, me and you are making snow people.
Okay.
I will be back in 4 weeks. We're gonna come back on the 16th of February and stay that whole week.
Well, if you got time, you got to come out to the house. We don't have a baby grand, but we got a couple keyboards. We got a nice little house.
Hey, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Come on out for dinner.
For sure, I will.
All right. We're gonna work on that post of the city reach.
Vegan food.
I'm gonna let Frank take care of reaching out to everyone. So we'll see you soon, Queen. Very nice to have you here, and have fun on your date.
So yes, I'm excited. I'm gonna put on the sexy dress. Y'all have a good night, and I will
take a picture.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye. Oh my goodness.
Person.
Yeah, I love her too. And so I finally figured I at least have the sound from the right place in the right ear. So I am keeping up with the conversation in real time. It's nice to know that. Say that again, Frank.
Your good ear.
My good ear. Lord, I just feel like there's always an issue with something. One day I'm going to have a show that is just smooth. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's got to happen soon. But everything on YouTube has been just fine. So it's something about Twitch. I don't know what it is. So as we talk to people, send them to YouTube. They'll get a better experience there.
Gotcha.
All right. So now that it's just you and me, can we start with you performing something? Because I love how you perform. So I definitely want to get you to do that for us.
Performing something. Oh my goodness. Oh.
I think I told you I wanted you to do that.
You
so
probably
that you would
did.
Be prepared.
Well, I will tell you, I'm not prepared, but I do have lots of work right here in front of me because I spent my week teaching. And when I'm teaching, I'm always performing for the students. Let's see if I can find. There it is. So, all right. So Yes, this piece is so one of the things that I've been doing, I fell in love with studying the Harlem Renaissance when I went back to school again, and I've been working on putting together some workshops and hopefully one day a Harlem Renaissance conference here in the Twin Cities. And so I wrote a poem. I got commissioned to write a poem. W.E.B. Du Bois, Webb of many names. He a lot of people don't know that he also wrote a couple novels along the way, among the many other phenomenal things that he did. And he wrote a novel called The Dark Princess. And there is a line in the book, there's a statement in the book in which the fictional princess, titled Princess, in the book says during a dinner party conversation, the Congo is flooding the Acropolis. In that conversation they were having was kind of about how people of the African diaspora are flooding the European world, the worldwide Western European world. And so I took that idea, and Elaine Locke, who wrote the essay, The New Negro, and I wrote a piece that I've been performing at these workshops that I do, dealing with kind of the Acropolis's influence, or Greek and Roman influence, on the Harlem Renaissance artists, because one of the things about being artists of that time was being able to take Africana, well, really Africa and Africana, and put African/African American influence and twists and culture into very European art, because the philanthropists were white people, which is why we can even really know about and study the Harlem Renaissance, because the money that was promoting and the philanthropists that were promoting these artists,
oh my gosh,
was
European. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But we have a friend of mine, Light Eyes, who's also a Twitch streamer, is raiding into our channel with more people to listen to this conversation. Hey, Light Eyes, very nice to see you. And everyone that's coming in from your stream, LaShawn, welcome in. Kaiser Anisi 42. Please let me know if I said that right. Welcome in. DJ Coach Herb 97. Welcome in. GC Class the DJ Draw 20032. Welcome in, you guys. We're having a wonderful conversation today with Frank Sentwali, who is a spoken word and performance in artistry performer in residency. I'm gonna get it right. In Minneapolis. You've missed Queen Sheba. She is gone. DJ B Tech, welcome in. Psalmist, hi, how you doing? Disco Darren, what's up with y'all? We're gonna get back into the conversation. Frank was just getting ready to perform a piece for us, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the show. All right, Frank, go ahead.
All right, so the title of this piece is The Newest Negro, spinoff from Elaine Locke's The New Negro essay. In his novel, The Dark Princess, W.E.B. Du Bois' fictional princess states this: the Congo is flooding the Acropolis. In his painting, Building More Stately Mansions, however, Aaron Douglas serves to remind that the Acropolis is but a notch in this evolutionary timeline. It's not the beginning nor the end, and while the Western cultures marvel then and still at the idea of the Parthenon with fetishized history and embellished grandeur, worshiping the high city temples and ancient structures built to pay homage to the Athenian divine, Douglas subtly reminds that while the structures of ancient Rome and Greece are revered, there's great other story seldom told in the behind. He lightly fades memory of Egypt and Carthage, even as he foregrounds more prominent structures of medieval Europe and Rome and modern-day Gotham, his blending of shades of darkness while making it clear black making it clear it was Black scholars, slaves, laborers, and artists, generations of Africans through creative genius and atrocious hardships who absorbed the mightiest blows the Western world could throw and persevered and then perspired possibility, structuring futuristic foreshadowing of cultural new growth, creativity wrung from trauma that would flow as smooth as the tonal blends of Douglas's Afro-Deco style. If the Congo was flooding the Acropolis, it's because Babylon bled the Congo dry and splattered the blood all over America and the rest of the World Wide West. I'm fairly certain that when Zora's eyes were watching God, she didn't picture Athena, but I bet Janie would have understood Euripides' Medea. From ancient Greece to Eatonville 20th century, those women probably would have sat and sipped and pined over, why do guys make men make women do things like this? Yeah, the Congo flooded the Acropolis and the new Negro flooded Harlem. And since New York's Federal Hall is a Greek-style structure on Wall Street and Jay-Z be the newest Negro in the Billionaire Boys Club and rap is the new jazz, then perhaps it would be happening to say the Congo has flooded Manhattan as well. I mean, if Cab Calloway can make 50 grand a year during the Great Depression, is it far-fetched that Harlem's Puff Daddy can make $1 million during a recession? If Langston Hughes, with Harlem as his muse, spoke of the Weary Blues in 1925, and Jessica Care Moore spoke of a Black Statue of Liberty in 1995 live at the Apollo, then perhaps Aaron Douglas's painting was a portrait of a people's journey from pharaohs into tomorrow. And along the way, there were passages and migrations and trials and tribulations, resistance and renaissance, and culture creating and art making, and a spirit of raised hands and unbreakable minds building mansions in the sky to proclaim to the history, there is no stopping us. There was even a story by a freedom fighter in which he wrote of a princess who spoke of the Congo flooding the Acropolis. A freedom fighter who knew that the freedmen was flooding Babylon with blood, sweat, and tears, beaten, broken, bruised, but undeterred, even while asking what happens to a dream deferred. Well, sometimes it resists and manifests into a man who rises up and tells all the land, yes, we can, and we have, and we will. But don't take it from me. I wonder what Elaine Locke would say about Oprah, Denzel, Viola, Chappelle, Barack, and Jay-Z. Yeah, the Congo flooded the Acropolis. If today you asked me or yesterday W.E.B., we'd smile nearly contently, but still mischievously and say, yeah, my hep cat, the Congo flooded the Acropolis. Definitely.
That's, man, it just never ceases to amaze me how you can just take a subject and come up with an entire piece like that. So we just welcomed in some people. I know that you were saying that this was something that you did as you went back to school about the Renaissance period. Let's just take a second to step back, because I don't know that we really introduced you very well during all of this, Frank. So tell us a little bit about you, your journey, Edgy Poetic Enterbrainment, what you're doing with BMF Entertainment right now. Talk to us a little bit about your journey.
Well, writing has probably been a lifelong passion for me. I wrote my first short story when I was 7. And it was one of those little things that, we're writing. I went to a school of gifted and talented, all Black school of gifted and talented for kindergarten, first and second grade. And it was one of those things that was, a little small charter school. So we were doing a school fundraiser and everybody had to write a book. We got it binded. It was illustrated, all of that. And then we sold these books. Apparently, unbeknownst to my little 7-year-old self, my book was a little bit different. My book actually followed structure of a book, right? Beginning, middle, end, apex, the whole 9.
Right.
Conclusion. And I sold a lot of books at this little, and like with any child, when they do something that seems a little bit advanced and we give them positive reinforcement, they embrace that as a form of their self-confidence. And then in
Hold on, don't do that. Hold on. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
And then in 1984, the movie Beat Street came out, and Melly Mel rapped in the title track, "There's gold in the street and there's diamonds under feet, yet the children in Africa don't even eat. There's flies on their faces, they're living like mice, and the houses even make the ghettos look nice. The water tastes funny, it's forever too sunny, and they work all month and don't make no money," and so on and so forth. And I'm listening to this. Now, keep in mind, this was at a time where every night, late night, those infomercials would come on about the famine in Ethiopia, and they'd show these really sad little children with famished bellies and the flies flying around them. And so for me, Melly Mel was putting visual imagery and words to something that, you know, when I stayed up too late as a little kid at 11 years old, that I was watching, and I was like, oh my goodness, the way he put those words to images that I could see, I want to be able to do that when I grow up. And so I was always writing raps in 5th and 6th grade in the 80s, like early 80s. You know, this was not common in Minnesota because hip hop wasn't in Minnesota in the early 80s. And so that was always my thing. And, you know, then life went on and I started rapping. I was in a rap group here and did a lot of stuff with hip hop as a youth in my teens, but I was also a good student and I played basketball. And so I went off to college to play basketball. When I came home from school is probably really when my life had to take a direction, because it was kind of one of those things where, you know, they taught us in that era. I'm born in 73. So I grew up in an era where America, especially when you have educated parents, your pathway was you go to college, you get a degree, you get a good job, and then you live life and you do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
Well, but there's a lot that happens in between there. So I did what I was supposed to do. And then I came home and was like, okay, now what? Right. And most of my friends didn't do what I did. So now I'm kind of like, really, now what? Because all my homies are on the block. So now what?
Right.
And then I went through a really rough patch. Me and my father got into an argument. So I'd moved back home. The plan was never to be there long, but not long turned out to be really not long, because I discovered that 2 adult Black men probably don't share the same space at the same time very well, especially when one of them is dad and pays all the bills, right?
Right.
So I got kicked out the house. Then my best friend got murdered. And then a woman who I barely had known, you know, kind of just doing my thing, calls me and says that she's pregnant. So everything just happened in a whirlwind. And, you know, back then, mental health was not a conversation. Depression was not a conversation. But I absolutely was in a depression. I didn't know that then because we didn't have these conversations in, you know, the early 90s.
Right.
And a friend of mine, a high school sweetheart, saw me walking down the street, and I can be blunt about it now. I was borderline suicidal. Like, whether or not I wanted to live was a very real question for me. And she saw me walking down the street, probably in my pathetic head down depressed stride. And she had just finished school herself and got her degree, and she was writing for the local newspaper here. And she was an entertainment editor. And so she was doing a story on a spot where they did spoken word. And I didn't know what spoken word was. All I knew was what rap was. And she said, "What are you doing Friday night?" I'm like, "Nothing. All I do is go to work and look sad." So she was like, "Well, I'm going to pick you up. I want to take you to the spot I'm doing a story on." And there's a purpose to me telling the story. So we'll get there. So I go there and I see a lot of the cast that I used to do rap with when I was in my high school days are all in this spot. Friends I hadn't seen since before I left for college. And the DJ's DJing and the vibe is good, and it's set up folding chairs and theater style, and they start the show, and they introduce the first artist, and this woman walks up to the microphone and the DJ stops the music, and I'm baffled. Now I'm confused, right? The world I'm from, the DJ might cut in an instrumental or, you know, something, but the music doesn't stop when somebody comes to the mic, right? So the music stops, and this sister named Amina, beautiful sister, but not in a, like, I wasn't looking at her like, "Oh, she fine." It wasn't even like that because my headspace wasn't there, but she just had a beautiful aura and energy, head wrap. Just her skin was just clean, right? And she started delivering this poem, and I could not tell you a word from the poem, but I can tell you what it was about. It was about overcoming the hardships that she had overcome in her life. And it just rocked my whole world. And this is the first poet of the night. And she got 3/4 of the way through her poem. She only did one, and tears were coming down my face. Like, I was touched instantly.
Wow.
And I sat there frozen for the rest of that show. And it was like half open mic, half show. So it was kind of like there was an open mic component, but like the first 8 artists were all pre-booked. And I remember when that show was over and my friend dropping me off to where I was staying, because I was homeless but not houseless.
Right.
And I just remember thinking to myself, I am going to live. This was a direct quote of my thoughts. I'll never forget it because it changed my life. I said, I am going to live for 7 more days because next Friday I am going to do something on that microphone.
Wow.
And I went to where all my stuff was at. And I had a computer box, one giant computer box. This is before the laptop days, right?
Right.
Giant computer box, desktop computer box full of writings that I had been writing from my first writings all the way through my writings through college. And I'd always written raps. In my mind, it was all raps. And so this is how naive I was. I'm digging through a box of poetry trying to find a poem.
A rap.
Because in my mind, these are all raps. I got to find a poem, right? So I'm digging through a box of raps trying to find a poem. That's how uneducated I was in like poetry, period.
Right.
Because I went to school and poetry was Robert Frost, Shakespeare, like they might have maybe showed us a Langston Hughes poem. I doubt it though, right? My public education in poetry was old white men.
Right.
Or really ancient deceased white men. And so since I couldn't find a poem, I said, let me see which one of these raps I can turn into a piece of theater because I want to do something like I saw on that stage. So I found a piece that I wrote called The Killing Season, which was my response to my best friend being killed and the violence that was happening in our communities. And I went there that next Friday and I performed that piece with every bit of emotion and spirit and depression and hope and hopelessness, like every fiber in my being, I put into that one performance. I practiced it. I took all of the 4/4 out of it and turned it into a piece of poetic theater that it was just like theater that rhymed, right? Yeah. And when I finished the second verse of that poem, there's 2 verses. When I finished the second verse, the last lines is, Lord, what's it going to take to bring an end to this killing season? And I finished the season on my knees. I dropped to my knees. I'm in prayer position. So it's like a prayer. And I'm like, God, what's it going to take to bring an end to this killing season? And there's sweat profusely dripping down my body. It wasn't even hot in there. Like, it was like I was sweating out all of the old. I was sweating out everything that needed to be cleansed so I could become something new. And along with sweat dripping down my body, tears were streaming down my face, like bawling like tears, just the heaviness of the poem, the moment, everything. And my eyes were closed. And when I looked up, it's called the Bomb Shelter, was the place that we were performing. I looked up and the Bomb Shelter was giving me a standing ovation. Like stood up out of their chairs, standing ovation. And I said to myself, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And I bonded with some people from that very night. And we ended up probably about 6 months later forming a spoken word troupe. We got asked, my sister, right? Nepotism. My sister was co-promoting Bob Marley Festival at St. Paul's Midway Stadium for that particular year. And she said, I want you guys, it ended up being me and 2 other gentlemen, Black and Tile, as you very well know. She said, I want you guys to write a group poem and dedicate it to Bob Marley, write a Bob Marley dedicated poem and perform it to close after Rita Marley, the I3s, after they performed, right? So they were the headliner. Rita Marley was the headliner. They performed, and then we were going to do a cappella poem to close the whole event, right? So we sit down with a piece of paper and a bottle of, I want to say, Jose Cuervo.
Wow, yeah, that's taking it back.
Right. And so in one notebook. And so the dig was, we all had to write a bar. So the notebook comes to you, you write a bar you write a bar, 4 bars actually, you write 4 bars, and then you pass the notebook and you pour yourself a shot. And that notebook went around and we went through most of that bottle.
Right.
And the piece was called I Feel You. It's on our first album. It's the opening track of our first album. And we performed it at the Marley Festival. And that was crazy. There's a story behind that too, but I won't get into it. But we performed it at the Marley Festival. And then shortly after that, I got asked by Robin Hickman, who is the niece of Gordon Parks, to write a poem dedicated to Gordon Parks to perform at the Fitzgerald Theater for a homecoming tribute. Those of you who don't know, Gordon Parks spent a lot of his teenage years in Minnesota, and his aunt lived on the same block as that I grew up on. So his aunt, where I hung out with his nieces and nephews. And so they asked me, she said, I want a poet from St. Paul to do a poem to pay tribute to Uncle Gordon, and you're the best one I know. Which was like, I'm like, am I the only one you know? Because I'm still pretty green at this right now, right? So I read A Choice of Weapons, and I reread The Learning Tree, and I wrote a poem in honor of Gordon Parks called The Ship Still Sails. And Avery Brooks, and those of you who don't know what Avery Brooks is, go back to the 80s, watch an old show called Spencer for Hire. He was Hawk on Spencer for Hire. He's a Shakespearean actor. One of my idols, because I love Spencer for Hire, and Hawk had that BMW M3 or whatever, and it was like this brother stepping out, and
it was really the car. I was like,
right?
Yeah, it was a car, right?
But it wasn't just a car. He was a bald head brother before Michael Jordan made bald heads look good. He always had this white full length coat on, and his voice was like this. Like, this brother was bad to me. He was like, yo, that's the image of a black man I'm trying to be like, and so here I am performing this poem, and Gordon Parks and Avery Brooks were good friends. So Avery Brooks was the MC of the homecoming tribute to Gordon Parks at a sold-out jam-packed Fitzgerald Theater. I'd never done anything quite like this. I had performed in front of thousands at Rondo Days, performing rap, but I had never done anything quite like this. Even the Marley Festival gig, I had my guys with me. So now I'm solo in front of a packed theater, paying tribute to another person I idolized, Gordon Parks, being introduced by somebody I idolized, Avery Brooks. I'm like, this is blowing my mind, right? How did I get here? And so I do this poem. And I mean, you talk about work. I practiced this poem so much. I put so much into the writing of this poem because I'm like, I am going to do something that makes Mr. Parks proud. And I performed the poem, and armpits sweating profusely, and I walk off the stage. Like, I performed the poem. I don't even take a bow. I rock this poem and I beeline it off stage, and I walk right past Avery Brooks, and he's standing there in this proud godfather, like proud uncle stand, because he didn't know the poem. Nobody heard the poem at sound check, right? I just did a little part of it, and he's Avery Brooks. He don't need to be a sound check. Gordon Parks isn't that sound check, right? So he hadn't heard it. He's standing there, he's got his hands on his hips, and he's looking at me like this, like, with this shake of approval, and I can hear the audience, but I don't hear the audience because it's like those time stop moments. But I see Mr. Brooks, and he's just like this young buck just did a thing, right? And all of a sudden he does like this, and I'm like, I'm still in like green. I'm like, he's like, and I'm like, he's like, so. And then he does this, and he makes me walk back out onto the stage, and all of the Fitzgerald Theater is on their feet in applause. And there's a lady like 3 rows back, and she's crying. And Mr. Brooks was basically like, you did that. You did that, and I walked back up the stage. And then one of my biggest blessings, so along with getting jewels dropped from Avery Brooks later that night, was we're at the after party, and Mr. Parks is there, and he's the man of the evening, and he calls me into a separate little room. We're at the Gibbons Mansion for this after party. He calls me into a separate little room, and at the after party, to honor him, he takes about 15 minutes to just sit down and talk with me privately about writing, about owning your material, about, he said, never let them turn your poetry into a movie, because he said every time they take lines out of my work to create a movie, it's like cutting a piece of my heart out. I'm like, wait, yo,
man.
you want to pay me to take my poems a movie? I'm getting that dough, right? but he's just like, but he takes a minute to like, just drop jewels to this. I had to be like 25, 26 at the time.
Okay.
And so from then on, I was like, spoken word is what I do. I was passionate behind it. And then my buddies, Black and Tile, Black Power, TUCU, right?
Yes.
Side Digs. We started doing open mics. We're now hosting open mics, right? And I'm standing on stage at Caribbean Splash, this spot owned by Ben Coleman, former basketball player for the Gophers, played a little pro ball. And we're doing an open mic night. He asked me to start an open mic night, so I did. And one night I said, just improv on the mic, I said, what you're about to see is called Edu-Poetic Enterbrainment. It's educational poetic
entertainment. Say that slower. Yeah. Say that a little slower.
Edu-Poetic Enterbrainment. And so I said, it's educational poetic entertainment for the brain. And then I said, aimed at those who can't maintain yet, because we all going through the same shit, right? And Black and Tile kind of looked at me and they was like, that's it. We're Edu-Poetic Enterbrainment. And then we're like, and we knew that was long, so we're like, we're Edu-Po for short. And I was like, oh yeah, Edu-Po. Right? And then we started saying Edu-Po, and people be like, right? And so from then a group was born, and then we were 3 poets, and then Tile got a bass, and he's one of them people that he can pick up an instrument, never having played it before, and play it like he's been playing it for years.
The brother
so he
is talented.
Background to our poetry. And then we met this guy who was a drummer, this Native American dude who was a drummer, who was a rock drummer that wanted to like add some funk and hip hop drums to his cachet. And so he was like, y'all need a drummer to go with that bass, because you got to have a whole rhythm section. So then it was like 3 poets, a bass named Queen Norma Jean, and a drummer. And then one day we were performing. We were doing gigs everywhere. Like we were doing gigs like we were a band. We went and got an old keyboard, and next thing you know, Black's playing the bass and Tile's playing keyboard because he could play whatever. And JC's playing drums, and we were doing like Mill City Music Festival. None of us knew what we were doing, except for we knew how to write good poems. But we were just like, JC was the only true musician, and we were just making grooves and doing poems over grooves. But people loved it because the poetry was what it was.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, we're performing at a venue, packed house, and this guy's in the audience, and he's like, "You guys need a real bass player." Like,
a real bass player.
You don't need to be playing bass. You need to be like. He's like, can I come practice with y'all? So then Jay Murray came, and next thing you know, we got Tiles teaching them bass riffs, Black's teaching them bass riffs that we play. Next thing you know, we got a real bass player playing the bass grooves that we wrote, and JC the drummer's like, oh, I got a real bass player that I can play drums with, right? And then we're performing, and then Drea comes around, and she's like, y'all need a sister in y'all's group. Right. So like, and a sister with some vocals. So, and I had seen her sing before. So I'm like, come on. So next thing you know, it's 3 poets, a bass player, a drummer, and a background vocalist. And then my buddy Ahanti, who I'd known since 5th grade, we're longtime friends, and he's a percussionist and an actor. And Ahanti was like, what up? Y'all want some percussion? Come on. Next thing you know, percussion's added on, right? And we're still blending keys. Like one moment Black's on keys, one moment Tile's on keys, right? And Ahanti was like, yo, I got a sister. She can sing. We're like, bring her to practice. Paviel. Next thing
is that how Pavi came in?
Yeah, that's Pavi's Ahanti's sister. So that's how Pavi came. She was 16. We were like, she's a little young. And then she turned 17, and we're like, okay, we can get her into most places just as a performer. And then she turned 18, and it was like, okay, she's like in the group now.
Right.
And then Alex, somewhere in between there, was like, y'all need like a real keyboard player, you know, because we just playing basic, simple chords and stuff, but everything else. So he's like, y'all need a real keyboard player. Next thing you know, we're touring. We're in Chicago at the Navy Pier. We're in Charleston, South Carolina. We're performing all over the Twin Cities. We're touring. We did 24 shows in 28 days from Vancouver all the way down the coast. And that's what we were talking with Sheba about when we ran into Malcolm Jamal Warner and his band after I had just ran into him before at the New Eurekan a year later. And so next thing you know, we got, 3 albums, 4 albums, and 3 tours under our belt. And we had a radio show, and we're on, being guest appearances on local television shows here in the Twin Cities. And EduPo was born. And, but it all started with me walking down the street depressed and my high school sweetheart driving by like, you look horrible. And I look horrible. And poetry saved my life. And so within that, right around 1999, I said, wow, look what this craft has done for me in these last 3 years. But I didn't even know what spoken word was. I didn't even know there were different types of poetry. I didn't know, school didn't teach me this. You know who really needs this is youth. Like, who really needs an outlet for expression. This was before Youth Speaks, before Brave New Voices, before Youth National Poetry Slam, at least before anybody in Minnesota knew about it. And so Ahanti was teaching African drumming. Now, also, we're trying to be full-time artists. So we got to figure out how to make a living to doing what we do, because now we're a 7-person band. That's, if we do $1,000 gig, that's pennies,
Right.
And so, right. And so, and my mother worked in education, my family worked in education. And so we wrote up and built a brochure of programs that we could market and solicit to schools for spoken word poetry and African drumming, and then a blended program where you could book us for a month and you get 2 weeks of African drumming instruction, 2 weeks of spoken word instruction. We would just, the 2 weeks would just flip. And then at the end of the month, the kids could do a full showcase for the whole school with African drumming and poetry.
Okay.
And we didn't have enough money to get drums, so we got buckets, and the kids learned sticks and buckets, but African drumming rhythms, because that's what Ahanti did. And so at the end of a month, we would do an assembly, and we'd have like 15 to 20 kids that would be doing poems over African drum rhythms over sticks with buckets, taught by Ahanti and I. And that's awesome. Got popular. We were doing that in schools all over. And ever since then, Ahanti no longer does, he no longer lives here, but I've been teaching spoken word in schools ever since then, as well as hip hop workshops, as well as in-school performances, and I still do. And now, I think my biggest blessing is when you start talking about affecting future and having a tree, right? An extended tree of people you've impacted. I can say that young people I've worked with are award-winning fellow writers, like New York Times best-selling writers, Dinesh Smith. If you've read the book by Dinesh Smith, I think I have it. I know I have it. I just don't know if I have it right here or not. I think it's in my room.
That's awesome.
And then 2 of my former students both run nonprofit Black centered writers organizations, one for youth, one for all ages. These were kids that I had a chance to impact, that grew up, that have now gone on to start their own organizations, and they're impacting other children. And so through everything, when it's all said and done, spoken word has allowed me to impact community and society in a positive way. So that's how I ended up here, right? And I promote
And that, the thing is when you think about spoken word and poetry, it's not a mainstream genre, right? It's not something that everyone knows. I don't even think that a lot of people who would be listening to this knew that Malcolm Jamal Warner was even in that genre, that he had a band.
It has been for a while.
Yeah, he has. But I don't know that very many people even know that a bit. Yeah. But it's lovely that you've been able to take that passion and create a life around that, right? You've been able to pay your bills on that, and that's awesome. That's all anyone ever wants to do with the passion that they have in their life.
Right. D.L. Hughley, so I was chopping it up with him backstage after one of his shows. Had a good fortune of, and he's a fan of spoken word. And I had a chance to we probably talked for like 2 hours. Like this art form, like, Sheba talked about when you've been doing this for 20 years, the people you meet, like, I chopped it up with Cornell West for like an hour and a half, just on like, not we're on a panel or whatever, just he and I just hanging out talking. Because I opened up for him when he came here to do a keynote. But D.L. Hughley said, poetry, he said it took comedy a long time to find its punchline, for comedy to become a mainstream thing. He's like, it's going to take time, but spoken words just got to find its punchline. And that was years ago, and as Sheba, I think TikTok, social media is now poetry's punchline, right? Where now spoken word, talented people have access to showcase their talent to the world, and opportunities are there that they never were before. I talk about, my band and touring and stuff. We were the first people that I know that had an EPK, an electronic press kit, on CD-ROM. So that's how far we're going back, right?
Right. I remember that EPK.
Right. And we sent ours because we went on tour over in Europe. And the way that we were able to get paid bookings at places in Europe was we sent our EPK on CD-ROM over to Europe to booking to clubs and venues, because I had a friend over there who kind of could get it to the right people with a price tag on it. And that's how we ended up getting paid to perform everywhere we went to perform in Europe. They didn't know who we were. There wasn't no internet where they could just, there was internet, but it wasn't like it is now where they could just see video of us live and we could promote through the internet. Like MySpace was fairly new. MySpace was like what people used, but it's MySpace compared to what TikTok is now. Come on, right?
Right.
Or, Instagram is now. And so we literally sent out CD-ROMs. And then it went from CD-ROM to DVR, right? And from DVR to DVD, right? And so, but yeah, like that's how we had to work back then. And so I think social media has helped spoken word find its punchline. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. It's definitely been an interesting journey with you, my friend. I don't know that I had heard that story about how poetry saved your life. And so I'm thinking that's probably the title of your book. I don't know if anyone has that title. You'll have to do the research. But I say look right now. Poetry Saved My Life is an amazing title for your book, my friend.
It could be. I would like to think that I'm probably not the only one. That
no, you're probably
saved.
Not. But that's okay.
My Angelou talks about how writing saved her life, so
But that's the
there's
title
a book
of her
how
book.
Poetry Saved My Life.
There is a book out there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, it's not how poetry. There's actually a number of them. How Poetry Saved My Life, a hustler's memoir. But that's okay. I can be more creative than that.
Yes, you can be more creative. Well, as long as you are thinking about writing your book, that's all I care about.
I'm working on it.
Good.
I'm actually working on a play. I'm turning one of my poems into a play, a piece that I wrote called Bodied by Time in America, which is it covers a paternal bloodline of a fictional family from about 1857, 1858, right before the Civil War, all the way to contemporary 2000s America. And it's the premise of the poem. It's that I'm turning into a choreo poem. Shout out to Intezaki Shange. That I'm turning into a choreo poem is built from the idea of science's fairly recent still discovery that trauma can be passed down through DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's not really a trauma story. It's a progression. It's an evolution story. Because although trauma follows this family bloodline, each member, as we move forward in time, elevates their station in American economic and social society. And so it's kind of triumph in spite of the tragedy, overcoming the traumas and using the traumas through this familial bloodline to make sure that the next generation advances, which is something it would appear that we've lost sight of when you look at urban Black communities and what's happening with the youth. Although I also would contest that because of social media and because information streams are what they are, and because sensationalism rules the day, we don't recognize enough of how families are elevating above the generational traumas, because that's not what's sensational. Unfortunately, what's sensational is the violence. What's sensational is the youth slipping through the cracks. What's sensational is the crime rate. That's all the sensationalism. But because I go into school after school after school after school after school, yeah, there's a lot of special ed. And yes, we are disproportionately represented in special ed, but we also have a lot of Black excellence. And
Absolutely.
there's a lot of our youth that are excelling, but that's not sensational. So that's not what gets the focus. And maybe it's rightfully so. Maybe we absolutely need to, tip our cap to those young people and keep the spotlight on the young people that we need to be trying to save so we can save our communities. But, but that story, that poem Bodied by Time in America, and it's even still kind of the to body somebody, like to kill somebody, that kind of throws you off when you hear the title. But ultimately what's being bodied is being bothered by how America attacks us, right? So what's being bodied is reacting to the struggles and the traumas in America. We got to get to the point where, yeah, it is what it is. I'm unbothered. I fight against racism. I deal with classism. I deal with, oppressive forces. I deal with what it is to be Black, to walk into a space and know that there's an energy that immediately comes with my skin color in this country that is a stress that Baldwin said, to be a Negro and be relatively conscious in America is to be in a state of rage almost all of the time. Like, that's very real.
It is very real.
But James Baldwin also talked about not letting that rage destroy you, right? And we have to figure out how to be bothered, if that makes sense.
Be bothered. That's very interesting, because that's kind of the premise of this show, right? Inequality,
right.
How we have to overcome so much. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about trauma on this show before. Mm-hmm. And I would like to say there's another streamer on Twitch. She's Kim Possible, and she was the first person that transferred the PTSD from post-traumatic to post-traumatic slavery disorder. And I feel like there is some strength and positivity to be drawn from our trauma, but you have to switch your perspective first to understand that there are good things that come from everything, right? So I am excited about this play of yours, because I believe that that's what our families need to do. If you have a family that's overcoming generation after generation despite the trauma, that means they are probably tapping into that DNA, that slavery DNA that we have, that even though we have been taught that it's negative, slavery's bad. But imagine the DNA that we've had that has been created within us to be the survivors of all of that and still be here, to still strive, to still have Black excellence, to still understand that the only reason why we're hated is because of the color of our skin. Like, that's the only reason.
Well, the fact that we can define ourselves now. I mean, and that goes back to the Harlem Renaissance study that I've been doing. And Elaine Locke's essay, The New Negro, was about self-definition, right? We're defining ourselves, and white America doesn't know what to do with that. And, white America's response was, Griffith's Birth of America film, right? And so it's when we are in defiance by elevating and by self-defining, that also unfortunately puts another target on our backs in so many ways. And that's kind of, so one of the other premises of the piece is triumph of the human spirit. Because when I talk about slavery, I don't like to talk about the Middle Passage. I feel like, that to me gives the United States of America a pass, because then they can say, oh, well, Africans sold people into slavery and the Middle Passage, all of that. But the idea of the industry of slave breeding, that's where I try to start that conversation.
And that is where it starts to me. That's where it starts here.
Because when you are, because what is a child other than a blank memory board? It's a, other than what is subconscious or unconscious, it's a blank computer board, right? It's a blank storage board. And from birth, information is being inputted, really from conception, but absolutely from birth about this world. That's why, people say, oh, we're born into sin. Yeah, because the world is sinful, right? We're born into the world, right? We are born perfect. The world is what's messed up, right? And so, but this idea that, let's just say, theoretically speaking, even though the Middle Passage was outlawed around 1808 or whatever, let's just say theoretically speaking that the slave trade to North America, to the to the colonies, stopped around 1812, 1813, whatever. So you're talking about, and the Civil War was, late 1850s, Emancipation Proclamation, 1865. So you're talking about, basically 40 plus years, almost, 50 years of breeding industry, right?
Yeah.
That means children born with because of being stripped from parents and stripped from family, being born without understanding of what they once were, being raised without understanding of what they once were, being raised without understanding of an idea or a notion of what it is to be free, right? So it's only through triumph of the human spirit that somebody in 1858 would crave to know that their existence must be for something other than what this slavery experience is. Right? That's triumph of the human spirit to be free, which is why I purposefully start the poem with that character. And the character in the poem, the first character of the poem, actually, I start the poem with that character sneaking off in the dark under low light, under lantern light, with a Bible, inside of the Bible being, so you've seen the movies where they like cut out the pages of the Bible and there's a gun inside, right? Inside of the Bible being a dictionary. Trying to learn how to read. So that's the opening character, right? And I say in the poem, I need to know that my life was meant for more than this, right? I need to know what is it about my skin. So I use the word integumentary. Like one of the words they're looking up is integumentary, right? And I purposefully don't say skin right there. I say integumentary because integumentary system is a bodily system. So I'm making that relationship between skin and systems in the poem. As opposed to just saying my skin. Well, what is the skin? Your skin is part of an integumentary system. There are layers to the skin, and each layer serves a function, right?
And it's the largest organ of our body.
Right. And so that's, I'm not going to get to, the poem is long. It's an epic. It's like an 8-minute poem, but that's kind of some of the layers of the premise of the poem that I'm turning into. I want to stretch it out into a 1-hour choreo poem with multimedia dance imagery. The only voices will be mine, so I'll be playing all the characters, but I want movement and dance imagery and multimedia imagery going around it. So I want to borrow a little bit of Intozaki Shange's For Colored Girls ideas of movement and things like that, and then add, you know, technology to that. But then I'm going to play all the characters, the Black characters, the overseers, the officer, Jim, who's the final character's co-worker, who symbolizes also modern Jim Crow. There's so many layers. The family's name is the Jeffersons on purpose. Right? The family's name is Jeffersons.
Not moving on up Jeffersons, but Thomas which Jefferson? Clear about that one.
Jefferson that owns slaves. That's on that rock out in South Dakota. That is one of the most disgusting monuments of imperialism, I think, in the entire world today.
There's so much. And I just want to say that if you're listening, Frank Sentwali here is in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, Twin Cities, however you want to put it. And I feel like people don't really understand how much culture comes from Minnesota. It's our culture. I mean, we only know Prince, and then maybe, you know, because Janet Jackson was up there with, you know, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. That's like what we're known for. That's it. But there's so much more.
Yeah. So much more. I mean, you know, for a region that I think the Twin Cities is like 8%, something like that.
It's smaller than that.
Is it lower than that? 7, something? I know it's low. We all live in the same areas.
But it's all very concentrated.
Very concentrated. Although, you know, the suburbs are growing and the school districts are struggling with that. But I think we're like, I don't know, 9-10% of the entire state. But it is very much an education state. And so there's that. It was so the first great migration from the South of Black people fleeing terrorism was what I call it, the great escape from Southern terrorism. You know, a lot of so the central part of the country, those that were, you know, freedmen in Mississippi, northern Louisiana, you know, directly south below us, kind of went on a straight line, St. Louis, Chicago, you know, and then some stopped in Milwaukee, you know, and then a few made it all the way to the Twin Cities, right? So that first great migration of Black folks was a lot of academics, a lot of scholars, a lot of Black professionals, right? People who had professional acumen. And they settled in what we call the Rondo community. And so I think because, even though we're a small Black community, I think because the first migrants here, the first escapees that settled in the Twin Cities were generally professionals and generally educated, as opposed to the sharecropping community that came in the second Great Migration or that stopped further south. There was definitely, especially in St. Paul, a precedent set for education for Black children in the 40s, 50s, 60s on up.
Yeah.
So, and because of that, I think that that's the layer, that underlayer, that foundational layer. So there's a lot of Black scholars here. There's a lot of Black professionals here. And then we got 13 Fortune 500 companies. I think last was 13. It might even be more than that now. So there's a lot of money to be made here.
There's a lot of money there, definitely.
You know, now the racism is very covert. And very
Minnesota nice is a fallacy, is what I like to tell people.
Minnesota nice to others, you know, to Minnesota nice to beige people. But it's, you know, and so because the racism is very covert and very institutional, the numbers, if you just study the statistics and the numbers, it's like one of the worst places in America to live for Black people. If you're poor and Black, right? If you're not poor and Black, you can make a lot of money here. If you're not educated in Black, you know, it's tough. If you're educated in Black, there's opportunities here. And it's kind of always I suppose, been that way, because the second great migration that came here, and we get into colorism, we get into classism, and the intersectionality of how Black people in this country coexist. The second group that migrated was a lot of the sharecropping group, a lot of the less educated group, as much of the second great migration group that left Southern tyranny and terrorism in the 1950s, later on, past, the first group being 1920s, in 19 teens to 1930s, that second group being 1950s and 1960s.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, classism created a fractured Black community, which makes no sense, because it's like you said, it's like 7-8% of us. But that first group was kind of the uppity Blacks and didn't want the sharecropping, less sophisticated Blacks moving into their neighborhood and mucking up the good relationship they had with the surrounding whites. And so, that first group was not really welcomed in St. Paul, and they were pushed toward Minneapolis. And, the kids don't even know why there's a St. Paul, Minneapolis beef, so to speak, between Black communities to this day.
Right.
But it really goes back to classism.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the 50s and the 60s, and how Black people were accepted by other Black people when they moved up here.
Yeah.
So, and I would guess that's not uncommon
in a lot of places. Yeah.
Right. But so I'm sure it's not an uncommon story, but I think that classism has played a big role in fracturing the collective Black experience in America. And I think where that plays the biggest role is in education. And unfortunately, our children are the ones suffering.
That's so true. And it really changed our conversation today, changed a lot, because Queen Sheba joined us earlier today. I really wanted to talk a lot about education with you, but you graciously agreed to come back next week, which is when I'm having the actual conversation about education in this country, our public school system. And you're going to bring a different voice to this conversation, an alternative way to teach our kids. And so I'm really, really excited to have you back next week to have that conversation, along with some other panelists. I've got someone from Baltimore, right here in Arizona, Chicago, Minnesota. So we've got a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different regions that are going to be represented on this panel. And it's going to be an excellent show next week. So make sure that you join us. It's not the normal time. As you can see, it's at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. So, but it's going to be awesome. Thank you again for agreeing to come back.
Yeah, I love that conversation. I mean, it's a conversation that I've had a lot of areas of study in. I have a lot of strong feelings about Brown versus Board.
Yep.
And how the role that the civil rights movement played in Black education. There's a lot of stuff that we have pedestalized that we don't really discuss the intricacies of, and a lot of stuff was a double-edged sword. And so
it was.
In education, if there is a really distinctive direct outcome of the civil rights movement, it can be shown, it can be seen most in education, in public education, and in Brown versus Board. And there's a lot of good nuggets to talk about, because it's been a struggle as I tell people all the time, they legally desegregated school buildings. They did not integrate, and they did not integrate curriculum, nor did they integrate staff, nor did they integrate culture. And our kids have slowly but surely, generationally, suffered in large parts because of it. But that's a conversation.
Absolutely. That's a conversation for next week. I also want to tell you, so the week after that, we're kicking off Black History Month, right? My first guest is going to be Mahmoud El Khati.
Hey.
And we are talking about Yeah.
He's everybody's godfather, so
Yes, that's why I'm mentioning it.
yes.
I'm going to have like a 4-part series with him called Historically Speaking.
Oh
So
man, that'd
part
be
1
beautiful.
is coming in February 4th, the first Saturday. And one thing that I realized as I was doing my research is that the Dred Scott case was there in Minnesota.
Oh yeah,
There was
oh
a
yeah,
park.
oh yeah.
There's a Dred Scott Park by my
Yep,
son's house. And when I saw that, I was
yep.
like, wait. And so that got me, I'm like, okay, let me figure out what this is and how this happened. Because we all heard of Dred Scott, but didn't know that's where it was.
Time out. So that means you liked EduPo, but you didn't listen to EduPo
I
because
did.
the opening line of the song Therapy is, I bring it hot from the land of Dred Scott, decisions calculated like a terrorist plot.
I don't know that I
Opening
understood what
line.
it meant then. I knew the
Ah,
line, but didn't it like Dred
you didn't
Scott in
calculate
Minnesota?
from the
Who would
land of
think?
Dred Scott?
But who would think? Seriously, I always thought, and this is another reason why this year we're focusing on education 2 ways, right? On this show,
Mhm,
we're talking our educational systems, right? As you
mhm,
say, there's a direct connection between the segregation, integration, education, and where our kids are today. And
mhm.
so understanding that is important. But not only that, but just educating us, because I consider myself a pretty intelligent person, very smart, but there is so much that I don't know.
Mhm.
That's why we're focusing on education this year. So while I'm learning, we're all going to learn together.
Well, I do want to say this because I think it's important for the listeners. I think it's important for all of us to understand this concept. America, especially as it relates to ADOS, right? As it relates to those of us who are descendants of American chattel slavery, has still not integrated. We are still on a pathway toward integration. We did not get integration. Dr. King did not ever say we got integration. As a matter of fact, he kept championing the effort that America cannot be what it promises to be until it integrates. And integration is not just political, it's not just sociological, it is internally in each individual human being. What we got was desegregation, but we did
Right.
not get integration. And that's where it really affects education for Black youth.
Yeah.
So when
I
we talk
always,
about that next week, that's
this
important.
one of the things I always tell people is this whole busing thing. Because, my son, we lived on the north side and he got bused to Hopkins. And then, that's what his dad wanted. And I always thought if they really wanted busing to be impactful, they wouldn't just bus kids to white schools. They would bus schools to black white kids to black schools. Then I would feel like, okay, then there'd be some kind of an effort of equality if they were bringing white kids into the black schools, just like they were taking the black kids and sending them out to the white schools. But again, a whole other conversation.
They actually did that for about 2 seconds. That didn't last very long. Actually, there's a case. I have to look it up to remember the exact name of the case because we studied it not too long ago. But it went all the way to the Supreme Court, so maybe I can have that information ready for next week. But even still, that the buildings are irrelevant, right? The buildings are irrelevant. Integrating the staffing and integrating, most importantly, the curriculum. Integrating how we teach curriculum as it relates to the different cultural experiences of Americans is so important. And let's be honest, that's not something that is highly looked upon. All you got to do is look at the state of Florida, look at the state of Mississippi, look at the state of Texas, look at what those politicians are doing to make sure that the curriculum is not integrated.
Yeah.
Look at what Santos and them are doing. What's the one down in Florida, the crazy one?
Santa or new guy that light up.
I can't remember the daggone governor's name down there, but because I DeSantis, yeah, I won't even go spend money in Florida. I told my kids, no, you're not going to Disney World. Florida will not get a penny of my dollars,
I don't
tourist
blame
dollars.
you.
There's some states like Indiana. I will drive around Indiana before I will stop and fill up at whatever state is before I get to Indiana, before I stop and put money into a gas station in Indiana. They will not get a single sales tax dollar out of me.
Yeah, that was the first and only state I ever got a speeding ticket in. I'm going with the flow of traffic, and somehow the cop sees my face and pulls me over. I'm like, well, I'm just going with the flow of traffic. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
if everyone's speeding,
I got a personal bone to pick with Indiana.
Girl, oh my goodness.
Even though I got a homie from Gary who and then that's a heartbreaking story. That's a whole nother conversation. But like Gary, like the deindustrialization of America's urban epicenters and what that did to Black communities was just
right.
Like there's some human rights crises that we don't that America has to deal with. There's a lot of human rights violations and human rights crises right here in America, which
Absolutely.
isn't to say that I hate living here or whatever. I hate nationalism. I think nationalism and religion, not spirituality, not God, nationalism and religion and patriarchy are just destructive enterprises. But yeah, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent because
we're gonna have to do a conversation with Twali part 2.
Man, because
we'll
I'll get on my soapbox and I'll be controversial. I'm okay taking that because I stand behind how I feel and what I say, and then I have information and evidence to support it and back it up if people want to do the research. So I don't mind being controversial. I'm sorry if you live in Indiana. Probably if you live in Indiana, you probably hate Indiana too. You just can't get out. So
well, the next time we're definitely more connected. I don't know what happened with Twitch today. It was just Twitch all day, but that's where we really get the opportunity to have that one-on-one interaction with the audience. There's the live, and so they'll be able to ask questions and give comments, and we'll definitely make sure that the next time we're prepared like that.
I'm twitching.
Twitch is twitching, yeah.
I'm twitching.
Exactly.
Twitch is twitching.
Twitch is twitching. But I feel like I've had you on here for so long. I'm so excited about our next conversation next week, and then the follow-up, and then the Poets of the City reunion. We have a lot of work to do over the next few months, mister.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I can't see who's on and who's not, but I just want to say thank you to anybody who tuned in and continue supporting Twana and Inequality. Her heart's always in the right place. She's always trying to do things to uplift and build community. She's a wonderful human being. And so please keep supporting her and help her grow.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And we're going to go out with no fanfare. We're just going to say bye to everybody in the Twitterverse, Facebook. This is the first time I even tried doing anything with Facebook. So fingers crossed. And for you out there on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye. So I wore my Minnesota Lynx today.